Chapter 931. Song Tianyu appeared to be deeply worried, but he had been guarding the scene of the accident the whole time. He didn't call the police because the Song family's manpower would be better than the local police's. Fifth uncle held a black umbrella and stood beside Song Tianyu. The weather had actually become cooler at this moment because it had drizzled at noon. Fifth uncle was still holding the walkie-talkie in his hand, continuing to communicate with the rescue team. Master, they found the wreckage of Mrs. Sport's car at the foot of the mountain, but they didn't find the body. Fifth uncle said happily, in other words, Miss and the others should be fine. And now the fog has dispersed a lot, so we should be able to find them soon. Don't worry. Song Tianyu nodded. In addition to the Song family's people, Song Howren and Mr. Blind also went down. As for the three Song brothers, they didn't leave, but guarded by the side. Because this assassination attempt on Song Ying might just be a prelude, as the real leader of the Song family, Song Tianyu might also be in danger, so they had to be careful about this. As for the surroundings, the Song family's guards had already investigated. They definitely wouldn't let go of any place where they could hide and snipe to ensure that nothing went wrong. Maybe I was too hasty. Song Tianyu suddenly sighed. Although his voice was soft, for the three Song brothers, who had sensitive hearing, it wasn't that they couldn't hear it, but these words made the three of them feel confused. Fifth uncle vaguely guessed something because last night, Song Tianyu had secretly called Song Ying to the room and chatted for a while. After that, Miss Ying came out with a heavy heart. At this time, Fifth uncle's phone suddenly rang. After listening for a while, his expression became fierce. Okay, I got it. Just follow this lead. Fifth uncle, what's the matter? Song Tianyu turned around and asked. Fifth uncle said seriously, after the incident, I started to investigate, especially the person who put the bomb in Mrs. Sport's car. Have you found it? Song Tianyu's eyes suddenly turned cold. Fifth uncle said, after investigation, we found the person who might have put the bomb in the sports car should be the maintenance master in charge of these sports cars. In the few days that Miss was in the hospital, this master came once. Where is he? Fifth uncle said, we can't find them anymore. The whole family has moved away. They didn't say where they were going. I think a neighbor saw him leave in the middle of the night in a hurry. Song Tianyu coldly snorted. Who introduced this maintenance master to us? How do you check the manpower? Fifth uncle smiled bitterly and said, Master, this maintenance master has always been doing maintenance for our family. It has always been him since young master. He has been doing this job for almost 10 years, and he is very familiar with the guards at home. We have been too lax. 10 years. Song Tianyu suddenly narrowed his eyes and then sneered. Good. A hidden chess piece buried for 10 years. It seems that the person behind this has been eyeing my Song family for a long time. Very good. At this moment, the walkie-talkie rang. Fifth uncle said happily, Master, eldest young master said that he found some traces left behind by Miss and Master Chiu. We should be able to find them soon. Song Tianyu nodded at this time. At this time, he was more concerned about the comfort of these two grandsons. As for the matter of a certain mastermind, he could only deal with it later. Girlfriend? Song Ying opened her mouth, feeling very surprised. She frowned, looked up and down Luoqiu, and said disdainfully, How can a person like you have a girlfriend? God! What kind of woman would be able to stand you? She's simply a heroine. My character is somewhat evil, Luoqiu said calmly, so I am very grateful to be able to meet my current girlfriend. This made Song Ying speechless again, but in an instant she was so angry that her teeth itched. But when she thought of what she just said, Song Ying felt a burst of regret. Did her head get hit by a door? What if Grandpa insists on marrying me to you? Thinking of the words that came out of her mouth, Song Ying's face and ears turned red. She felt incomparably ashamed. Why didn't she stop at that time and say this out loud? Don't take it seriously. At this time, Song Ying said indifferently, I'm just hypothesizing a situation to see if you will really reject me. It seems that you really don't intend to stay. Those words last night and just now, forget them all. Luocio nodded. I also think it's better to pretend that I didn't hear it. Don't worry, I will forget it. How can a person like you have a girlfriend? God is simply blind. Song Ying scolded at this time. You should be destined to be alone for the rest of your life. Luocio just smiled and didn't answer, but stood up and said, I'll go and see how the bonfire is outside. You continue to rest. Song Ying watched Luocio leave, and didn't know why, but she felt that his back was a little lonely, so she muttered, Isn't it a bit too much? So annoying, why is his temper so good? At least get angry once, bastard. Why am I the bad guy from the beginning to the end? Song Ying sighed again, and gradually felt that her eyelids were a little tired. Finally, her tiredness came up, and her consciousness gradually blurred. But I appeared in time, otherwise. I'm so annoying. Why do I act like a prince? She slowly fell asleep. The bonfire outside the room was not made casually, but through a little trick. In fact, it was best to use a smothered fire, which could produce more smoke. Luocio was holding a branch covered with dead leaves. He patted it on the bonfire from time to time. Clouds of thick smoke rose from the bonfire one after another. Because there was no wind, the smoke rose straight up. Luocio looked back at the room, and knew that Song Ying had fallen asleep. He suddenly missed Yu Yi, so he snapped his fingers. Then a figure appeared beside Luocio. This was the image that Yu Yi projected to him, not the real thing. Yu Yi slowly opened her eyes. At this time, she should be in the club, sitting quietly, cleaning. Basically, it was these things. Master, what's the matter? The servant girl came to Luocio's side and asked with her head lowered. Nothing. Luocio smiled, and his hand was still waving the branch. Even if I suddenly want to see you, so I called you here, can't I? Yu Yi will respond to Master's call all the time. The servant girl smiled, and then hugged her dress and sat down. Did you have a good holiday? Very good. Luocio nodded and suddenly said, Next week, I will accompany Song family to go back to China. You can move the shop to the vicinity of Mount Tai. Okay. Yu Yi nodded quickly. What about the business? Luocio continued to ask. Yu Yi said, in fact, during Master's holiday, there is no business in the shop. But I have upgraded the game world of Taiyinzi once. At present, the number of players born in the game world is about 10,000. So many. Will there be any problem? Luocio asked curiously. Yu Yi shook her head. There is no problem for the time being, because these people are scattered all over the world. With the current population, it doesn't attract much attention. Of course, it's not good to have more people, so I plan to stop when the number of people reaches 20,000. In the future, this number will be maintained. Some will come in and some will go out. So, those who went out would naturally become the club's property. You can handle this part. Luocio nodded. If we have time, let's go in and play again. Okay. Yu Yi also nodded, as if she was looking forward to entering the game next time. She kept a faint smile on her lips and then said, As for the voices in the shop, I have basically rejected them. Rejected? Luocio was stunned, blinking his eyes. Yu Yi said, Yes, as long as we arrange something outside the shop door, those wandering customers will suddenly wake up after being attracted. So there is such a way. Luocio had never thought of such a way to reject customers. However, even if there was a way to reject customers, it was not a long-term plan. Without business, the shop owner's time as a shop owner would always be consumed. In addition, Luocio did not think that the altar would always acquiesce to this kind of behavior of rejecting customers, unless there was some supporting reason behind it, which could make the will of the altar acknowledge it. What's the reason? Luocio thought of this point and asked directly. Yu Yi said, This is to train Bucky. The customers who are guided here will be transferred to Bucky. Because people who are confused in their hearts are actually easy to be bewitched. Miracles after miracles brought more and more believers. As long as Bucky has a large number of believers, he will have more money in hand. He is a greedy guy, but he doesn't realize it himself. Luocio nodded. If giving up some scattered customers was used to train a bigger customer, the mysterious will of the altar would probably turn a blind eye to it. Luocio suddenly stretched himself. He glanced at Yu Yi, thought for a moment, and waved his hand. From a tree not far away, a fresh leaf flew directly into his palm. Luocio picked up the leaf and put it on his lips, whispering, "My father taught me to play the leaf when I was a child. There is a song, I will play it for you." Miss Maid tilted her head, letting her long hair hang down naturally, her eyes full of hope. Fragrant grass covered the sky, the wind rustled the leaves, and the song Farewell was played. In the wooden house, Gan Hong's slightly tense and painful expression slowly relaxed, and Song Ying's frown after sleeping also gradually disappeared. After a long time, Luocio loosened the leaf on his lips, whispering, "It's almost time." Yu Yi glanced ahead. Someone found this place. Maybe he found it with his ability, or maybe he was attracted by the sound of the leaf. Yu Yi nodded. "Then, Master, I'll go back first. Can I keep this leaf?" Luocio smiled slightly, and the leaf disappeared in his palm. Miss Maid's face showed a trace of happiness. She was projected here, and her real body was still in the shop. Her real body had seen a leaf in front of her. "Here, Master." Suddenly, a voice came out. When Song Hauran hurried here, he saw Luocio sitting next to the firewood. Behind him was a simple wooden hut. There was also Mr. Blind in this team. Song Hauran hurried to ask about Luocio's situation, while Mr. Blind frowned slightly, as if he was listening attentively. "Song Ying is fine, but Gan Hong's injury is quite serious." Hearing Luocio's words, Song Hauran hurried into the wooden house. At this time, Song Ying, who was awakened, saw Song Hauran's uncle, and couldn't help but show a childlike grievance. Song Hauran hugged her and comforted her softly. Not long after, through the positioning system, a helicopter flew above the wooden house, and then Gan Hong was carefully sent up, and then rushed to the village. That's right, they went to the village, because the village had more complete medical equipment. Mr. Blind said that Gan Hong's injury was very serious, and she might end up paralyzed for life, so she had to be treated very carefully. However, after sending Gan Hong away, Mr. Blind used a special method to temporarily connect Gan Hong's broken spine. As long as it was treated properly, it wouldn't be difficult to return to its original state. When Song Tianyu saw Song Ying and Luocio come back safe and sound, a trace of a smile appeared on his face. To this old master Song, he could give up on money and power, but he couldn't give up on people. The next thing was much simpler, and that was to send them back to their humble home. At this moment, Mr. Blind and Song Tianyu were sitting in a Bentley that had been bulletproof. Mr. Blind suddenly exclaimed, as expected of a distinguished person, even in such a desperate situation, he was still unharmed, and even Miss Di Ying and Gan Hong escaped with their lives. Old Master Song also let out a long sigh. Yeah, the exploded sports car fell off the cliff, and they were still alive from such a high place. What could be more miraculous than this? I heard that since last night, there has been good news from our Song family's businesses. Not only did the stock prices soar, but we also found oil and gold mines. A distinguished person is definitely favored by the heavens and earth, Mr. Blind suddenly said. Old Master Song, after we return to the country, can I ask Master Chiu to do me a favor? Song Tianyu couldn't help but feel very strange, because, in his knowledge, Mr. Blind was almost omnipotent. What kind of favor would he need from others? What orders do you have? Song Tianyu asked carefully. Mr. Blind said seriously, I want to ask him to help me find something. With Master Chiu's status as a distinguished person, that thing will probably be very happy to be by his side. Thing? Song Tianyu was slightly stunned. Chapter 932. Soaring Dragon Vein? Song Tianyu was astonished. He knew where Mr. Blind learned from and knew some things about plain clothes. Therefore, he had no doubts about feng shui. An ordinary geomancer might just follow a book or only know a little about geomancy. It was sometimes effective, but sometimes not. However, Mr. Blind was an extraordinary person with true ability. The structure of the village was set up by Mr. Blind, and there was a natural maze outside. Outsiders would only get lost if they walked in. This had been proven many times. The dragon was the totem of that country. The vein was named after the dragon. It was obvious how precious it was. Mr. Blind nodded and said calmly, "The dragon vein is actually the direction of the mountains and rivers. There are 9 forces in the mountains. They are returning dragon, emerging dragon, descending dragon, rising dragon, flying dragon, crouching dragon, hidden dragon, soaring dragon, and leading dragon. This is the best of the 9 forces of the mountains and rivers. It is blessed by the heavens and gathered the fate of Kelowna. It has been said since ancient times that obtaining the dragon vein is equivalent to obtaining the world. This is because the dragon vein contains fortune and represents fate." "Then may I ask Mr. Blind about finding the dragon vein?" Song Tianyu hesitated. Mr. Blind calmly said, "Master Song, please be at ease. If this humble one can find the soaring dragon vein, and this young Master Chiu is also by his side, then to the Song family, there will only be benefits and no harm. If old Master Song doesn't believe me, I can also make an oath here." "Absolutely not," Song Tianyu hurriedly said. "Mr. Blind has helped me and the Song family. How can I not believe your words? How about this, if Mr. Blind still needs me, please don't hesitate. As for Luochio, I will think of a way. After all, Mr. Blind has reminded me that I can only follow his wishes. Nothing can be forced." "That's good." Mr. Blind nodded. While old Master Song and Mr. Blind were discussing something in the car, Song Ing and Song Howren were also discussing something in a high-class limousine that had been bulletproof. Long-haired barbarians? Song Howren was very interested in this. He was a person who had a strong interest in unnatural things. At the same time, he also had many experiences that ordinary people did not know about. Only he himself knew how much of the adventure stories he often talked about were true and how much were made up. "Really? Uncle, you better believe me. I even fought with this savage, and was almost beaten to death by it." Song Ing still had lingering fears. "Really?" Song Howren looked at Luochio. Luochio only said, "I only saw a huge shadow. It looked like a bear, but I don't know if it was the so-called savages. After all, the fog was too thick and I couldn't see clearly." "Are you doubting me?" Song Ing shouted angrily. Luochio smiled and said, "If it's really a long-haired barbarian, that's the best. Because this kind of thing can arouse people's curiosity. You'll anger people to death sooner or later." Song Ing sighed and sulked. She simply looked at the passing scenery outside the window. Unexpectedly, Song Howren suddenly said, "Speaking of which, it was little Luochio who saved our family's Song Ing." He casually cleared his throat and said solemnly, "Luochio, I can't repay you for saving my life. After all, I'm this girl's uncle. As the saying goes, parents' orders are the words of the matchmaker. You saved Song Ying's life, so she can only repay you with her body. Just accept this girl, I'll hand her over to you." Luochio smiled calmly and then shook his head slightly. Song Howren knew that this would be the answer, so he casually shrugged. "Ai, what a pity. I know Song Ying doesn't have any feminine charm, but are you really not going to consider it?" Luochio still smiled calmly and then shook his head slightly again. Finally, the eldest daughter of the Song family couldn't stand it anymore and shouted angrily, "Song Howren? Go to hell! I don't have an uncle like you." Song Ing violently kicked Song Howren until he cried out obediently. Then she frowned and said, "Girl, it's obvious that our family's Luochio likes ladies. You really don't have a chance like this. With you. No. Over." In the high-class limousine, the eldest daughter of the Song family mercilessly beat up the elegant eldest son of the Song family. And the newly appointed eldest son of the Song family became the only onlooker in high spirits. The driver was sweating profusely and couldn't hear or see anything. Bai Xuetang was diligently signing some documents and seemed to be in a good mood. But his good mood instantly disappeared in the next 10 seconds, because of a message sent to his phone. Song Ying has been found, she's fine. Bai Xuetang glanced at the message and his expression sank, but he continued to sign the documents in his hand. But after signing one document, Bai Xuetang suddenly put down the pen and swept the documents and things on the table away without warning. The cup was also swept away. The sound of the teacup breaking was quickly heard by the secretary outside the office. The secretary hurriedly walked in. "President, what happened?" Bai Xuetang slightly raised his head at this time. His face was gloomy and his eyes were sharp. The secretary was so scared that she subconsciously took a small step back. Then Bai Xuetang's expression suddenly became amiable and he smiled. "Nothing, I just accidentally knocked over the cup. Can you clean it for me? I'll go to the bathroom." Okay, President." The secretary nodded. Bai Xuetang stood up, adjusted his suit, and then walked out of the office calmly. After leaving the office, Bai Xuetang didn't really go to the bathroom. Instead, he turned to the stairs and climbed to the top of the Zhonghua Street Chamber of Commerce building alone. This was almost the tallest building in Zhonghua Street, with a bird's-eye view of the whole street. Bai Xuetang sat next to the water tower and lit a cigarette. Then he picked up the phone and talked to Basil. He said, "Basil, that guy must have lied to you. Song Ying didn't die and went back safely." After a moment of silence, Basil's low voice came from the other end of the phone. "The Song family is so tough. What are you going to do?" Bai Xuetang frowned. "Originally, I wanted to take advantage of the fact that the news of Song Ying's death would cause a fluctuation in the Song dynasty. Once the stock of the Song dynasty drops, with the funds you and I prepared, it's possible to buy a lot of stocks, but now it seems that it's not possible. The stock of the Song family has suddenly skyrocketed for some reason. The assets of the Song family can be said to have skyrocketed overnight." Basil said coldly, "That's why I told you long ago that there's no need to play so many tricks. As long as the Song family is wiped out, according to the law of this country, you'll be the only one with the right of inheritance." Bai Xuetang narrowed his eyes. "Do you think it's so easy to get close to Song Tianyu? How strict is the security of this humble house? And Song Tianyu will never let outsiders get close to him. He has a very powerful protective force around him. Basil, over the years, you've tried to assassinate him many times, right? But did you succeed?" "Humph." There was only a cold snort from the other end of the phone. "Since we can't assassinate him, we'll attack him openly. He's no longer in the village of Iris Flower. I don't believe that we can't blow him up with the defense of this mansion alone." "Don't act recklessly," Bai Xuetang said in a low voice. "We've made so many preparations before. We shouldn't be impulsive at the last step. Let's wait for a few more days. I've received inside information that the Song family will go back to China in 2 days. At that time, Bai Xuetang, you're a cowardly poisonous snake coiled in the cave. Since you don't dare to fight, I have no intention to continue cooperating with you." Beep. The phone was cut off. Bai Xuetang pinched the cigarette in his hand and sneered, "Basil, since you want to die, don't blame me." Bai Xuetang tidied his clothes, then took a deep breath and made another phone call. "Prepare the car, I'm going to my humble house." Song Haoran was answering a phone call from the village, while Song Ying stood nervously beside him. After Song Haoran put down the phone, Song Ying quickly asked, "How is it? Is there any news?" Song Haoran frowned and said nothing. His expression looked unexpectedly serious, then he put his hands on Song Ying's shoulders. "Can you prepare yourself mentally?" "How could it be?" Song Ying's face turned pale, and her hands that were grasping her collar nervously suddenly relaxed. No. It's absolutely not. You tell me. Song Howren took a deep breath and said, Gone Hong's, her operation was very successful. As long as she recuperates for a period of time, there shouldn't be much of a problem. Song Howren's expression changed instantly. He looked at his niece, who was not much younger than him, with a cheeky smile. The next second, his feet ushered in the unbearable pain of his life. You scared me to death. Song Ying suddenly cried at this time, and kept wiping her eyes with her palms. You scared me to death. Uncle, you scared me to death. You scared me to death. Song Howren smiled at this time, put his hand on Song Ying's head, and suddenly said softly, I haven't seen you cry for a long time. Song Ying stared at Song Howren, turned her head and left. Luvia just came in at this time, and saw Song Ying leaving in a huff, so she walked to Song Howren, military counselor. What happened to Miss Ying? Song Howren touched his chin. The late rebellious period has arrived, and she started to like to go against her parents. Oh, it's hard for me to be her uncle. Even so, Song Howren's face still showed a doting expression that could not be erased. Although Song Ying was Song Howren's niece, the two of them were not far apart in age. Everyone in the house knew that Song Howren treated Song Ying more like a brother to a sister. Right, speaking of which, Luvia, can you help me? Song Howren suddenly said, and then put his hand on Luvia's shoulder, and his palm was about to climb to Luvia's chest. Luvia grabbed Song Howren's hand in an instant, and then twisted it. She said indifferently, Military counselor, isn't your hand too low? Give me some face? Song Howren apologetically begged for mercy. Luvia sighed, and finally let go of Song Howren's arm. Luvia frowned at this time and said, We found those guys who attacked Miss Ying at the beginning, and we got some information from them. Those people were captured by the guards who had followed Song Ying all the way here. Most of these people were hit by Gan Hong's bullets, and some were knocked out by Song Ying's car. Hearing this, Song Howren suddenly became expressionless, and said indifferently, Tell me. The origin of this group of people is just to kidnap Miss Ying. Someone paid them to teach Miss Ying a lesson. It should be true. So there should be someone else behind this assassination. Luvia quickly said, Because we found a man's body on the nearby road. It seemed that he was hit by a heavy car and then thrown down the mountain, and a pistol was found near his body, but it had run out of bullets. Later, I checked the identity of this man and found that he was a gunman. Song Howren muttered, You suspect that this gunman is the culprit of the sports car explosion? It should be him. Luvia nodded, but strangely we investigated the scene where he was hit, and found that he seemed to have rolled down the mountain from the nearby watchtower, because there were many vines wrapped around his body at that time. This is the photo of the scene. Luvia quickly showed Song Howren a set of photos. Why did he look so scared before he died? Song Howren grabbed one of the photos and frowned. Luvia said, Before he slipped, he should have been seen by many people. We found a luggage bag in the watchtower, and there were some tools on it. In addition, it was very strange that there was a row of bullet shells on the watchtower's table. For some reason, perhaps there was a special purpose, like a secret signal. In other words, the clues were cut off when it came to this gunman? Luvia nodded helplessly. Although we found the gunman's mobile phone and the number he called, when we called again, it was already a dead number, so we couldn't trace it. Song Howren took this set of photos and looked at it repeatedly. At this time, a servant came in from outside the room. Master asked you to come over. He has something to tell you. When Song Howren came to Song Tianyou's reception room, he found an acquaintance there, Bai Shuetang, the president of the Chamber of Commerce of Zhonghua Street. As the brother of Song Howren's sister's husband, Bai Shuetang had the closest relationship with the Song family by marriage. And because of the death of Song Howren's brother-in-law, the Song family actually took care of Bai Shuetang a lot. Bai Shuetang also had contact with the Song family on weekdays, and he often visited them during festivals. Of course, Song Ing had the most contact with Bai Shuatang now, since Song Ing accepted the business of the Song dynasty. Master. Seeing Song Haoran come in, Bai Shuatang quickly stood up. Song Haoran waved his hand casually. Sit down, we're not outsiders. Don't be an outsider. What's the matter? Song Tianyo's face was gloomy at this time. Shuatang brought a message. I suspect it has something to do with the attack on Xiaoying. Bai Shuatang was shocked at this time. He suddenly stood up and even knocked over the cup in front of him because he was too excited. What? Xiaoying was attacked? When did it happen? How is she now? Seeing Bai Shuatang's nervous and excited face, Song Tianyu had to wave his hand. She's fine, just a little frightened. How could this be? Did those guys really come back for revenge? Bai Shuatang sat down with a serious face at this time, frowning deeply. Song Haoran said, Those guys? Bai Shuatang nodded and said, This is why I came to find you in such a hurry. The thing is, recently a few strangers came to Zhonghua Street. I asked someone to investigate and found that these guys are the descendants of the royal family of that small country. They have been hiding in Zhonghua Street for some time, living in seclusion, as if they want to do something. Basil. Song Haoran's eyes narrowed at this time. This guy has assassinated more than 10 times, and he still hasn't given up. I was afraid that these people would do something bad to you, so I came immediately after I got the news. I didn't expect Xiaoying to be attacked. Bai Shuatang clenched his fists at this time and said, Master, my brother was killed by this group of people. Now they dare to come again. I, Bai Shuatang, will not let them go. Don't be so excited. Song Tianyu waved his hand. I will deal with this matter. The news you brought tonight is very useful and has helped me a lot. Bai Shuatang shook his head and said, I can't forget the hatred of that year. My brother died young because of this group of bastards. So, if you need me, I, Bai Shuatang, will never refuse. Thank you. Song Tianyu smiled at this time. Well, it's late. You don't have to go back tonight. I have asked someone to prepare a guest room for you. You go and rest. Bai Shuatang nodded and did not insist on staying. Instead, he left the room after saying goodbye to Song Haoran. After Bai Shuatang left, Song Tianyu asked slowly, Haoran, what do you think? Song Haoran muttered. Bai Shuatang came at the right time. Song Tianyu nodded. It's really coincidental. But Bai Shuatang is a very shrewd person. If he has something to do with this matter, he won't be stupid enough to come at this time. I don't know what he is thinking. Let's put Bai Shuatang's matter aside first. Song Haoran suddenly said, If it's really Basil, I want to do it myself this time. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Yin 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 yin. Chapter 933. Song Ing was a little surprised to meet Luoqiu outside. Originally, after hearing the news from Song Haoran that Gan Hong was safe and sound, she should be able to sleep peacefully. But after returning to her room, she tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Originally, it was indeed too early to fall asleep at this time. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. She just planned to walk around the courtyard and enjoy the cool breeze or something. Then she saw Luoqiu, who was also in the courtyard. He should have come earlier than her, and Luoqiu was now living in the core area of the house. In fact, he was also using this courtyard. Originally, Song Ing wanted to turn around and leave, but she was curious about what this guy was doing here. What made Song Ing stunned was that Luoqiu was actually watering the plants here at this moment. In this courtyard there were many bonsai plants. These bonsai plants were the result of Song Tianyu's cultivation over the past few years, as well as his temperament. You're quite bored. Song Ing came to Luoqiu's side and said indifferently, I don't feel like reading tonight, and there's no TV program I want to watch. Luoqiu said casually while watering, It seems that the bonsai here haven't been taken care of for some time, so I just did it casually. Song Ing shook her head and said, These bonsai are all my grandfather's efforts. Don't ruin my grandfather's efforts by casually doing it. Luocio smiled and said, It's just watering and then cleaning up some withered leaves and weeds. It won't be ruined. Do you want to come too? With that said, Luocio picked up the scissors on the bonsai shelf and sent it to Song Ying. Why should I cut it with you? Song Ying frowned. She hugged her arms and squeezed her chest out. Luocio just pulled the arc of his smile slightly wider, but still didn't take back the scissors. Song Ying's eyes gradually became a little hesitant. Why should I accompany him to do this kind of thing? Song Ying finally took the scissors and then began to reluctantly cut some withered leaves for these bonsai. Actually, Song Ying knew that she was someone who found it hard to refuse an invitation. But she didn't know when it started, but she stopped listening to other people's pleas and blocked out all the voices that came to her. It was very tiring to constantly respond to other people's requests, such as the existence of Zhonghua Street. She knew that her grandfather, Song Tianyu, cherished old friendships, and she also knew that he had special feelings for the overseas Chinese. However, that didn't mean that Song Ying could accept the Zhonghua Street Chamber of Commerce's Life Gate approach. Most of the time, the Gate of Life would breed a bunch of parasites who would do nothing but wait for others to solve the problem when there was a problem. It was the same for the rent that remained the same for so many years. Those people had probably forgotten that every inch of the land they lived in and did business belonged to the Song family. They had long regarded every inch of land as their own. She would even resist some new measures. Being soft-hearted wouldn't do. She would only put herself in a dilemma. Therefore, Song Ying's attitude towards Zhonghua Street was also superficial. Just like cutting off the dead leaves on the bonsai, the parasites on the Song family tree should also be cut off to maintain the healthy growth of the Song family tree. Snip, snip, snip. Looking at Luocio, who was weeding across the bonsai shelf, the scissors in Song Ying's hand made a quick and regular biting sound. Luocio seemed to be aware of Song Ying's gaze. He raised his head, but the moment their eyes met, Song Ying snorted softly and walked away. Luocio looked at the place where she had just cut. Surprisingly, it was very neat. It didn't look like a messy pruning. She probably learned it before. However, after cutting, the leaves were scattered on the ground. It seemed a little imperfect. Luocio shook his head, took a broom and a shovel, and swept away the fallen leaves. At this time, Song Ying didn't continue pruning the bonsai. Instead, she sat on the stone stool in the yard and suddenly said, Actually, I think you are very suitable to be a domestic servant. Why? Luocio asked curiously. Song Ying narrowed her eyes and smiled. Because you look like a little bottom. Didn't anyone tell you that you are very feminine? There is. However, to Song Ying's surprise, Luocio directly admitted it at this moment. Luocio said, Actually, since I was young, my body was relatively weak. It seems to be because my mother had a cold when she was pregnant with me. After I was born, the doctor said that I was sick. My development was slower than others of the same age, so I looked very thin and weak. Song Ying was stunned. This wasn't the conversation she was looking forward to. Probably when I was in primary school. Luocio had a look of reminiscence on his face. Then, he waved his hands, about this tall, much shorter than others of the same age. And I still looked very thin and weak. My mother always said that I looked like a girl. Luocio suddenly smiled. This was a smile that made Song Ying feel very happy. She suddenly felt a little fascinated. Thinking of this guy when he was young in his parents' arms. What would he look like? Perhaps it would be completely different from now. Later, I began to drink some Chinese medicine and do acupuncture. Then, my father began to consciously exercise me. Gradually, my physique began to become good. After a few years, I became healthy. And then? Song Ying asked subconsciously. Luocio said, Later, I was rusty for a few years. Until I went to college, I didn't exercise much. Probably, I still look a little thin and weak. Song Ying tilted her head and sized him up. Then she suddenly stood up and walked in front of Luoqiu. She touched her chin and pinched Luoqiu's arm, studying it. Well, you have a skeleton, but you don't have much flesh. But to be honest, the 8-pack type like my uncle doesn't suit you. You should continue to be a sissy. Luoqiu smiled. Song Ying suddenly looked at Luoqiu seriously, saying seriously, "Can I ask you a question? Why don't you get angry? Is there nothing that can make you a little excited? Let's not talk about anger first. At least ordinary people will always have some emotional fluctuations when they see something they like. You, don't you?" "Something I like." Luoqiu thought for a while. "Yes." "What is it?" Song Ying suddenly pricked up her ears, as if she had discovered a new continent. "For example, I like your soul very much." Song Ying opened her mouth. Luoqiu's sudden answer made her a little unprepared. "My soul?" Luoqiu said softly, "Like a pearl in the sea. It was protected by its hard shell at all times. You can't pry open the clamshell because you are afraid that once you use violence it will become afraid. It may change color because of that, but before it opens itself, there is no way to know its real color. Maybe it is as magnificent as you expect, or maybe it is just the milky white of the most ordinary pearl. But one thing is certain, and that is the sense of anticipation you have for it, as well as its own growth potential. These are actually very wonderful things." Song Ying blinked and thought about the meaning of these words. She frowned and said, "What the hell? Your expectation for me and my own growth?" Luoqiu said softly, "You are very beautiful, maybe you can be more beautiful." Song Ying subconsciously opened her eyes wide. It was not the first time she heard such words from Luoqiu. She scratched her head and subconsciously said, "This? I can take this as you wanting to do something to me, or something like that." "I don't want to do anything." Luoqiu shook his head and said, "For me now, it is enough to just look at you quietly. Liking you doesn't mean that it is like between a man and a woman, or it can be said that it is appreciation. For example, people who love flowers love the beauty of flowers in full bloom." Song Ying couldn't help but rub her forehead. She couldn't figure out Luoqiu's attitude, which made her feel a little confused. Who would say such words so casually? In short, you are not allowed to have any strange thoughts about me, and I don't have any strange thoughts about you, okay? Do you want to continue? Luoqiu handed the scissors again. "I don't feel at ease leaving my grandfather's bonsai in the hands of a layman like you." Song Ying snorted and directly took the scissors from Luoqiu's hand. She carried Luoqiu on her back and cut the leaves on the bonsai. She suddenly asked, "How do you see Gan Hong?" "Like a lotus flower." "Lotus flower." "Bingdi lotus flower connected to you." "What does that mean?" Song Ying's hand froze for a moment. "Bingdi lotus flower? Could it be that this fellow is planning to combine the two together? But grandfather has already sent Gan Hong out. Based on Gan Hong's character, and I also, if this fellow is a little interesting. When the time comes, I am warning you, don't even think about it." Song Ying suddenly turned around, the scissors in her hand pointed straight at Luoqiu. "If you want to, I will cut." Kacha kacha, the scissors made a sound. Luoqiu said, "How is it? Do you feel better?" "Better, your sister. Seeing you makes me hate you." Song Ying was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She had a feeling that she was being played. She couldn't wait to give this fellow a good beating. Luoqiu suddenly said, "Gan Hong is injured. She should need some time to recuperate. I don't think it is suitable for her to be my bodyguard. I want to talk to old Master Song and ask him to withdraw Gan Hong temporarily. There shouldn't be any problems. Also..." He suddenly walked to the front of Song Ying. Song Ying suddenly retreated a little in fear. She rarely let a strange man get so close to her, especially in such a strange atmosphere. But if she took a step back, she was bound to bump into the bonsai shelf. She had to stop. Luoqiu stretched out his hand. It was easy for Song Ying to understand his intention, so she also stretched out her hand. "What do you want to do?" Song Ying glared and regained some of her momentum. But Luocio just smiled and didn't say anything. Song Ying had a headache again. It was this kind of gaze again. It was this kind of gaze and attitude that made people unable to refuse, as if he knew that she would do it. What do you want to do? Song Ying hesitated for a while, but finally stretched out her hand and placed it on top of Luocio's palm. Luocio turned Song Ying's palm over, and then put a silver bracelet on her palm. She always had a silver bracelet on her wrist that was almost identical to the one she was wearing. I think it's most appropriate for you to return it to Gan Hong's hand. Luocio said softly, since it's a kind of witness, don't take it off casually next time. Because if there's another time, I may be reluctant to hand it over. Song Ying sat on the round stone stool in the yard. She leaned on the marble table and looked at the moon with her hands supporting her cheek. The silver bracelet was in front of her. Luocio had left. She always felt that her life was in a mess. Mr. Bai, this way please. Thank you. You're welcome. The servant was taking Bai Shuetang to the guest room prepared for him to rest. Because of the marriage relationship with the Song family, Bai Shuetang would also be received in the central area of the house if he stayed overnight. In the eyes of outsiders, being able to spend the night here could be seen as a kind of capital. Bai Shuetang calmly followed behind the servant while looking at the scenery in the house. No matter how many times he looked at it, it was so unique that he really wanted to hold it in his hand. But some of Bai Shuetang's thoughts quickly faded away like the tide, because in front of the corridor, a young man was walking slowly. Bai Shuetang always felt that the young man's eyes fell on him, which made him feel unnatural. Young Master Chiu, good evening. When the servant saw the young man walking over, she immediately greeted him respectfully. The young man smiled, which was a greeting. Then he nodded slightly to Bai Shuetang and directly walked past. When he felt that the young man was a few meters away from him, Bai Shuetang subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. A kind of uneasy feeling that he couldn't explain disappeared. Bai Shuetang subconsciously looked back. At this time, he couldn't see the young man's trace. He had disappeared at the corner of the corridor. What a terrible feeling! The oppressive feeling made Bai Shuetang feel like he saw Song Tianyu more than 10 years ago. However, the feeling that Song Tianyu gave him was that he was decisive, domineering, and unquestionable. However, this young fellow gave him a feeling of humility to the extreme. Who is this young man? Bai Shuetang couldn't help looking at the servant and asking. Because Bai Shuetang had a close relationship with the Song family, the servant didn't think much at this time and directly said, Mr. Bai, he is Master Chiu, now the little child of the Song family. He was recognized by the eldest young master. Because the little child came back, the master was very happy during this time. Bai Shuetang was slightly stunned. He suddenly remembered that he had met this young man once. At that time, he was indeed with Song Haoran. But the little child of the Song family. Son, wasn't there one more heir of the Song family? Yin. Chapter 934. 24 hours before Song Ying's safe return. When the plane landed, Elizabeth, who was in the business class, took off her eye mask and rubbed her eyes. Did you sleep well? Zhong Luoyue asked casually. Elizabeth yawned. What time is it now, you? 9:40 in the evening. Zhong Luoyue looked at the watch on her wrist and smiled. It's the beginning of the day. For vampires, who lived day and night, the moon at 9 o'clock in the evening was like the sun in the daytime. Elizabeth looked outside through the window. The plane landed at the airport in Beijing of Hua Nation. It was the middle of winter in this country, and the night outside was boundless. Elizabeth suddenly said, This is the first time I've come to this mysterious eastern country. There was still some time to wait for the tunnel grafting, and they were still sitting in their seat. Zhong Luoyue asked curiously, You also think it's mysterious? Now it's us. Elizabeth looked at Zhong Luoyue and smiled. The 13 clans have some rules, vaguely marking this country as a forbidden area, and vampires in the clan are not allowed to step in easily. In recent decades, there was a piece of news about a fifth-generation vampire who was in danger in this country, but was unable to get help. In the end, when the members of the monitoring organization secretly recovered the vampire's remains, they could only find his clothes. His body had long turned into ashes. Zhong Luoyue was stunned. He was burned to death by the sun? Elizabeth shook her head. He died at night, and it was a full moon when he was at his strongest. I've read some ancient books. Our ancestors have always called this country Kelowna, and it's said that there are powerful magicians in Kelowna, and there is also a guardian called Shinryu. Among them, Shinryu has almost invincible power and can move mountains and seas. That's true. Zhong Luoyue suddenly smiled bitterly. He had grown up in this country, but he knew nothing about the mystical side of his country. Instead, he had to learn from Elizabeth. It was a little ironic Zhong Luoyue was suddenly worried. Elizabeth, if my country is dangerous for you, then it's all right, why Elizabeth said nonchalantly. Although this place is off limits, there are still many vampires who can't help but come here out of curiosity. In fact, there weren't many transcendents in this country, and most of them were in a state of seclusion. As long as they didn't cause any great panic and kept a low profile, it would be very difficult to attract those powerful transcendents. Back then, the vampire that was eliminated seemed to have participated in a war to invade this country, right? I'm not too sure about the details. Oh, I think it's someone from the Takizawa family. The War of Invasion, a few decades ago, the Takizawa family. That war seemed to be the only war that could be considered a war of invasion a few decades ago, right? Zhong Luoyue's heart skipped a beat. Could there have been a transcendent behind the scenes in those red years? If that was the case, did the country already know about the existence of the transcendent? What about the Zhong family, one of the 4 great families in the capital? Did her grandfather also have some unspeakable secrets? At this time, there was a slight vibration in the cabin. The grafting of the tunnel had been completed. Zhong Luoyue was the first to get up from her seat, but at this time, her phone rang. Zhong Luoyue glanced at the caller ID, and a smile appeared on her face. Just as she picked up the international long-distance call, she heard a very unhappy and reproachful voice. Yes, it's me. Only you can find people to block me at the airport, but I can't get people to kidnap you? I'm already very lenient. I just found some random hooligans, unlike you, who sent a team of elites. The phone was hung up at once. Zhong Luoyue smiled slightly, not caring at all. His mood had suddenly become much better. What's the matter? Elizabeth glanced at Zhong Luoyue curiously. The third daughter of the Zhong family chuckled. Nothing, just saying hello to an old friend. Come on, there's still some time. I'll show you the scenery of this country's capital. Okay. Elizabeth looked around the airport with curiosity. Zhong Luoyue looked back at the plane that had just boarded, and then sighed with emotion about this international trip. It was really an incredible journey. She actually became a vampire. She bitterly shook her head, then inadvertently glanced at the butterfly hairpin on Elizabeth's white hair, and that mysterious and powerful man. Luochio. Suddenly, Zhong Luoyue was a little absent-minded when she suddenly thought of this name in her heart. She felt that she had heard this name somewhere before. Where was it? Little you. Suddenly, a voice woke Zhong Luoyue up from her deep thoughts. She looked forward. It was a masculine man around 30 years old. Big brother. Zhong Luoyue nodded at the masculine man. This person was the 3rd generation of the Zhong family in the capital, Zhong Luoyun. At this moment, Zhong Luoyun was wearing a mink coat and a white suit, exuding a domineering aura from head to toe. Zhong Luoyun was very tall. In fact, Zhong Luoyue was considered tall among the Eastern women, but his height only reached Zhong Luoyue's shoulders. Grandpa asked me to bring you home. Zhong Luoyun quickly expressed his intention, and then glanced at Elizabeth, who was beside Zhong Luoyue. His eyes suddenly lit up, and then he asked curiously, "Who is this young lady?" Jean Louis immediately introduced. "Her name is Elizabeth. I met her when I was studying in England. I planned to do some business with Elizabeth, so I brought her back with me." Elizabeth. Jean Louis nodded. He was sure that he had never heard of this name before. But this young lady with a head of white hair was very eye-catching in this airport arrival hall. Jean Louis suddenly smiled and said, "Okay, since she is your friend, then let's go back together. Since she is a guest, I will ask someone to clean up the guest room." With that, Jean Louis walked in front and led the way. At this time, Elizabeth and Jean Louis walked side by side. She whispered, Is this your brother?" Jean Louis said, "Yes, I have another brother, 3 years older than me. But he is not in the capital now." "Why? What do you think of my brother?" Elizabeth shook her head and said, "Actually, it's nothing, I just don't like your brother's gaze." Jean Louis frowned. "Elizabeth?" Elizabeth said indifferently, "Invasive." Jean Louis was startled and immediately understood. Thinking of Jean Louis's reputation in the circle, she couldn't help but frown. "Elizabeth, my brother is born very proud, but he is not bad in nature. If he has offended you in any way, please forgive him." Elizabeth said expressionlessly, "In fact, after you were embraced, you no longer have any blood relations with these people. You have already left their world. If possible, I suggest you deal with these things as soon as possible, because there will come a day when you will feel regret because you forced yourself to stay." "I understand." Jean Louis turned her head away. At this time, Elizabeth suddenly walked into the bathroom. This action made Jean Louis somewhat puzzled. It seemed that vampires didn't have such a need. For example, she hadn't had such a need for several days. But Elizabeth quickly came out again with a smile on the corner of her mouth. She seemed to be in a good mood and looked very moving. "What's the good news?" Jean Louis asked curiously. Elizabeth said happily, There will be a long time, you don't have to worry about food. The 13 clans sent me a lot of pure blood, far more than the amount promised by Inspector Ivan that day, and it has been sent to my home in London. You can give me the address here later, I will ask the servants to send it to me." It was more than the amount promised by the arrogant inspector. Was it because of Luaccio? No, it should be because of the owner of the name that Luaccio pretended to be that day. Erex, what kind of person was this that the 13 clans would do such a thing to curry favor with him? And Luaccio, he actually pretended to be someone else's name casually and looked indifferent. Was it because he had something to rely on and wasn't afraid? Jean Louis suddenly felt a headache. Her knowledge of the extraordinary world was at best a drop in the ocean. She was really powerless. Suddenly, Elizabeth stopped and looked into the distance with a dignified expression. "What's the matter?" Jean Louis asked again in surprise. Elizabeth asked, "What's in this direction?" "This direction." Jean Louis thought for a while and said subconsciously, "Generally speaking, the Forbidden City is in front, but you are referring to the west. Well, that's where the heads of our country work. Is there a problem?" Elizabeth said seriously, "There is a very terrifying aura there, at least 10 times more terrifying than the Viscount Fernandez we met in the castle that day, compared to Luaccio?" Jean Louis asked subconsciously. There were too many things she didn't understand about the extraordinary world. No matter how Elizabeth described it, she actually didn't know how terrifying Fernandez himself was. She could only use Luaccio as a yardstick. After all, in the maze of the cellar that day, she saw with her own eyes how this mysterious young man easily eliminated Viscount Fernandez and turned the laboratory into a monster in Jinwu City. Compared to Big Brother Luaccio? Elizabeth suddenly laughed. There's nothing to compare. Of course, Big Brother Luaccio is the most powerful. Looking at the shy face of this young lady, Jean Louis couldn't help but let out a long sigh. This girl seemed to have some strange changes in her personality after breaking her abstinence and sucking human blood for the first time. Zhong Luoyue shook her head and got into the car prepared by the Zhong family under Zhong Luoyun's urging. Let's take a detour. I'll introduce some of the capital's environment to my friend on the way, Zhong Luoyue suddenly instructed the driver. If they took a detour, they would be as far away from the west side of the Forbidden City as possible. The Zhong family had a manor in the fragrant hills of the capital, which was also the Zhong family's headquarters. After Zhong Luoyue arranged a room for Elizabeth to rest in, she followed her elder brother, Zhong Luoyun, to visit the Zhong family's old master. At the same time, she asked Zhong Luoyun about what happened in the family during this period. When did this happen? Zhong Luoyue instantly frowned and even stopped in her tracks. This was because on the way to meet the old master, Zhong Luoyun told Zhong Luoyue that the old master had transferred all the shares of the Zhong family group that he privately held to the second young master of the Zhong family, Zhong Luochen. In fact, the three siblings of the Zhong family each held a portion of the shares of the entire group, but the majority of the shares were still firmly in the hands of the old master. But now, the old master suddenly transferred half of the shares to Zhong Luochen, causing Zhong Luochen to instantly become the person who held the most shares of the entire group. Zhong Luoyun's expression was a little gloomy at this time. Now, the shares in the hands of the second son, compared to the shares in the hands of me and you, plus father and mother, is more than the four of us combined. But in fact, because of father's health condition, he doesn't care about anything, he only holds the shares. And according to father's character, he won't get involved in anything. Then, do you know what the second son's situation means now, little sister? Zhong Luoyue was silent. She didn't know why, after hearing this news, although she was surprised, she didn't feel as dissatisfied as she had imagined. At this moment, she even felt that the power struggle in this kind of rich family was somewhat ridiculous. Glancing at her elder brother, Zhong Luoyun, who obviously wanted to form alliances from now on, Zhong Luoyue suddenly felt that the old master's transfer of shares to her second brother, Zhong Luochen, might be a good thing. She knew that Zhong Luoyun was more or less fond of grandiose achievements, and was very ambitious. It might not be a good thing to let her elder brother lead the entire group. Grandfather probably has his own considerations. Zhong Luoyue wasn't as enthusiastic as Zhong Luoyun had imagined, but she said coldly, as his descendants, shouldn't we listen to him? Or, big brother, are you really dissatisfied with grandfather's way of doing things? Ah! Zhong Luoyun laughed loudly. Why would I be dissatisfied with grandfather's decision? I was just afraid that little sister would be unhappy. Now, it seems that you also support this decision, then I'm relieved. The three of us are biological siblings, we are one body, actually, it doesn't matter who grandfather gives it to. We are all doing this for the group. That's the best. Zhong Luoyue smiled slightly. Let's go, grandfather must have been waiting for a long time. You go first, I still have something to do, I'll come over later. Zhong Luoyun shook his head at this moment, then walked away directly. When Zhong Luoyue couldn't see Zhong Luoyun's back, she directly walked into a room in the corridor, and made a phone call. The one who answered the phone was someone who had been arranged to be beside Zhong Luochen long ago, a rather ambitious man. Ching Yun. Third miss, I know you're going to call me. Ching Yun, who was far away from several provinces, said with a very firm tone. Zhong Luoyue thought that this guy might have already known about the shares. Now that her second brother could be said to be the leader of the Zhong group, it was uncertain whether this guy would be willing to continue selling information to her. Zhong Luoyue came straight to the point. Let's not talk about the things that everyone knows. Like before, what's my second brother doing recently? There is indeed one thing. Ching Yun hurriedly said, I don't know what second young master is doing, he is investing a huge sum of money. I accidentally saw a transfer check from second young master, the amount of a single transfer is as high as 5 billion. Zhong Luoyue frowned, the maximum amount of funds we can use every year is 1 billion at most. Where did second brother get so much money? I'm afraid it's the funds of the group. The member suddenly said, It seems that second young master called old master one night, and then the shares were given out, but I don't know what second young master said to old master. I see. Zhong Luoyue nodded, and then said, What else has second brother done recently? Nothing. Qing Yun thought for a while and said, He just hides at home every day, but he often chats with a singer cultivated by his entertainment company. Oh, this singer is called Qing Yiran. In addition, he often attends some lectures on Buddhism and Taoism. It seems that he suddenly likes to study these things. Oh, by the way, second young master recently bought a website. I'll send you the address. 3rd Mississippi. Zhong Luoyue hung up the phone after a while, and then clicked on the website address sent by Qing Yun. A huge icon suddenly appeared on the homepage of the website. Chapter 935. This involved an unimaginable legend. It was precisely because Zhong Luoyue had inquired about this legend that he was able to accept it so quickly when he first encountered a creature that was like a fantasy, the vampire. A shop where one could buy anything. Zhong Luoyue was sure that the miraculous recovery of old Master Zhong had something to do with this mysterious shop. That day, it was Zhong Luochen who unyieldingly wanted to take the dying old master away. In other words, in the matter of the old master's miraculous recovery, Zhong Luochen had made a great contribution that no one could imagine. However, Zhong Luoyue believed that her second brother, Zhong Luochen, must have done something for this. It was very possible that the person who made the deal with this mysterious shop was Zhong Luochen himself. Thinking about it this way, Zhong Luoyue felt relieved about the old master's sudden transfer of shares. This was probably a form of compensation for second brother Zhong Luochen. How could a grandson who paid a huge price not win the old man's favor? Especially when this grandson was very outstanding. As for her eldest brother, Zhong Luoyun, he had been very proud since he was young. Although he had outstanding abilities, he didn't know how to hide his strength and bide his time. He was like a fierce general charging on the battlefield, but he was not suitable to be a commander. With second brother's ability and grandfather's full support, there shouldn't be any suspense. Zhong Luoyue shook her head. She originally wanted to get involved in the conflicts of interest within the Zhong family, but now this thought had faded a lot. No matter who it was, if they saw that kind of extraordinary power, they would probably lose interest in the original struggle for benefits. No matter how rich you are, no matter how powerful you are, in front of that kind of power, you can only surrender. Zhong Luoyue sighed. This time, she came back to the Zhong family with the intention of dealing with the family affairs. Then, she made up her mind to follow Elizabeth and see a world that she had never stepped into before. If nothing major happened to the Zhong family, there was no doubt that the second brother, Zhong Luochen, would take over the authority of the Zhong family. This further strengthened Zhong Luoyue's desire to break away from the conflicts of these worldly aristocratic families. But this website and second brother's recent behavior. Zhong Luoyue frowned. Is this not your ambition, second brother? Thinking of this, Zhong Luoyue opened her lapel and took out a small makeup mirror box. After opening the box, there was a black card inside. If it is really omnipotent, then what kind of wish should I make? Zhong Luoyue stared at the black card. The remaining golden mark on the card suddenly lit up slightly. Zhong Luoyue took a deep breath and put the mirror box away. When she had obtained this kind of black card in the past, she had always had a feeling that if she stared at it for too long, she would have a deeper understanding of what the change this black card was. Or perhaps it was actually a kind of call. But now, this feeling was getting stronger and stronger, as if at any time, anywhere, she shook her head and sorted out her thoughts. Then, she quickly walked out of the empty room and walked towards old Zhong. Old Zhong was reading a book of quotations. Grandpa Luo was always by his side, never leaving his side. This book of quotations was something that people in old Zhong's era would read. After all, it was a collection of the words of the founding great man. At this time, Zhong Luoyue knocked on the door and came in. Old Zhong put down the book in his hand and showed a kind smile. You're back? Come here, let me see if you've lost weight. He was no different from those retired cadres who sat in the park and chatted, especially after he miraculously recovered. Even though he still held most of the Zhong family's possessions in his hands, Zhong Luoyue could no longer sense the aura of absolute supremacy that he had a few years ago from the old master. Maybe it was a good thing. After a lifetime of military service, it should be time to enjoy the rest of his life. Grandpa Luo. Zhong Luoyue greeted them and then sat down. Old Zhong nodded and then looked at Zhong Luoyue for a while, then said slowly, "You're still a bit pale. Why are your hands so cold?" Zhong Luoyue hurriedly said, "I just got off the plane, I guess I didn't have a good rest." Old Zhong didn't doubt it. He sighed and said, "Anyway, it's enough that you can come back safely. Anything that is lost can be earned back and found. But if you lose your life, then it is truly lost." Zhong Luoyue and old Zhong chatted for a while, then suddenly said, "Grandpa, there's something I want to talk to you about alone." "Just say it. Old Luo has been with me for so many years, he knows everything I know. What I don't know, he won't know more than me." Old Zhong shook his head slowly. "Grandpa Luo, it's my fault." Zhong Luoyue looked at Grandpa Luo apologetically. Grandpa Luo waved his hand and smiled. "It seems that what you wants to say is very important for our Zhong family." Zhong Luoyue nodded and then said seriously, "Indeed? Grandpa, I've told you about what happened in the castle, on the plane, and the hospital. What do you think?" Old Zhong glanced at old Luo beside him, and suddenly became silent. After a while, old Zhong said slowly, This world is not as simple as it seems. I can only say that what you've seen has happened more than once." Sure enough, Zhong Luoyue's expression changed slightly. Then she said, "Grandpa, I met people from the Song family this time. I found that there's a very powerful person in the Song family. He's like a martial arts master in a novel. He can even break a steel gate with one palm. Grandpa, our family—" "Haha, the person you is talking about is called Songda, right?" Grandpa Luo suddenly asked. Zhong Luoyue was stunned. "How does Grandpa Luo know that?" Grandpa Luo smiled and didn't say anything. He suddenly stretched out his hand and drew a circle on the cup on the table with his finger. Then the cup was cut into two parts. Zhong Luoyue showed a surprised expression. "Grandpa Luo, we call this power inner force." Grandpa Luo smiled faintly. "It's called inner force. The person you're talking about is called Songda. He used to be a martial monk in the Shaolin Temple. Later, he was expelled because he broke some rules. However, for some unknown reason, the Shaolin Temple didn't recover his kung fu. I met this person once. It should be 6 years ago. At that time, Song Tianyu of the Song family secretly returned to the country. It seemed like he had some personal matters to attend to." Zhong Luoyue picked up the cup with a neat cut and smiled bitterly. "Grandpa Luo, you lied to me so miserably. It turns out that you're a real martial arts master." Grandpa Luo shook his head. "I'm not a martial arts master now. I've only practiced some inner force technique. Now that I'm old, my body can't keep up. If I really fight with a young guy, I'll most likely lose. After all, martial artists emphasize on qi and blood. With qi and blood declining, I'm not as good as I used to be. I really can't compare with those guys who seek immortality." Zhong Luoyue sighed. "I once saw a blind person in the Song family. He had an ancient bronze sword floating beside him. He could attack remotely. It was incomparably sharp. He was just like a legendary sword immortal." Grandpa Zhong and Grandpa Luo suddenly looked at each other. Grandpa Zhong frowned. "Since you saw it, it can't be fake. However, if there's really such a person hiding in the Song family, then it seems that I still underestimated Song Tianyu. No wonder he was able to build such a big foundation abroad by himself. It seems that there's a real transcendent helping him behind the scenes." "Grandpa, Does our family have a similar person? Zhong Luoyue wanted to know the most about this matter. We don't. Grandpa Zhong gave a very definite answer, but our country has. As for what exactly it is, I can't tell you, because it involves too many things. Even the backs of the 4 great families are not allowed to know. But I can tell you one thing, that is, the guardians of our country have the power to make all the foreign enemies hesitate to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. Zhong Luoyue thought of Elizabeth's reaction to the west side of the Forbidden City, and her expression became serious. Zhong Luoyue smiled bitterly. I feel like I've changed the world overnight from ordinary to transcendent. But there's one thing I don't understand. Why do transcendent want to hide? Even if they like peace and quiet, what about a martial arts master like Grandpa Luo? If his martial arts can be spread, then the comprehensive strength of our country will be greatly increased, right? It's not like no one has ever mentioned this idea before. Old Zhong sighed. Even I once had the same idea. But the great man had a different opinion. He once said, a chivalrous man uses his martial arts to break the law. This sentence is still fresh in my mind. Grandpa Zhong paused for a moment to organize his thoughts, and then slowly said, think about it, it's not too difficult for our country to spread these martial arts, as long as there's a rule. But what about after it's spread? What will become of society? Once it's spread, many people will be able to obtain these powerful martial arts. It may not be obvious in the short term, but what about the long term? You tell me, when an ordinary porter learns these powerful martial arts, what will become of society? And what if the porter's nature is not good? Zhong Luoyue pondered for a moment. If ordinary people can obtain these martial arts, then the country will become difficult to manage. A chivalrous man uses his martial arts to break the law. Strong individual martial arts will often lead to contempt for laws and regulations. What's more, I'm afraid it will cause social unrest. Grandpa Zhong nodded. That's right, martial arts is one of the root causes of social unrest. A few decades ago, we used our lives and blood to exchange for an era of peace. How could we bear to destroy it with our own hands? Therefore, the country and some powerful inherited forces have made many agreements. We allow them to continue their inheritance, but at the same time, we don't allow them to develop themselves. Everything needs to be controlled to a certain extent. Are they willing to listen? Zhong Luoyue asked subconsciously. The country has a guardian. His power is enough to suppress everything. Grandpa Zhong said softly, but we can't mobilize him. There seems to be a hidden reason for him to protect the country. You don't know? Grandpa Zhong smiled bitterly. I'm afraid I'm not qualified. After all, I was just a soldier in those days. I was lucky to survive that era, and that's how the Zhong family became what it is today. Our Zhong family is one of the 4 great families in the capital. But who knows, there's another one above the 4 great families. There's another one? The Xianyuan royal family. Grandpa Zhong said seriously. It's a giant that has existed since ancient times. It's said that the Xianyuan royal family originated from the ancient Emperor Xianyuan. It has been passed down from generation to generation. It's just that ordinary people like us can't see it. Zhong Luoyue was speechless for a long time. That night, she heard a lot of secrets from her grandfather. When she left, it was as if she had gotten to know this country all over again. However, there was a guardian in the country who was powerful enough to suppress everything. Who was more powerful than Luoqiu, the guardian or Luoqiu? She still habitually regarded the mysterious Luoqiu as the reference for all the extraordinary people. Besides, she didn't tell Grandpa Zhong that besides the blind man who could control the flying sword, the Song family also had a terrifying figure like Luoqiu. Because when she saw Grandpa Zhong's serious expression when he heard about the blind man's existence, that was to say, the blind man alone was enough to make Grandpa Zhong re-evaluate the Song family. Maybe he'll be more cautious. In this case, Zhong Luoyue muttered, It's not a big deal if he doesn't expose the existence of Luocio. She didn't know why, but she always subconsciously didn't want to be the enemy of Luocio. Aristocratic families were similar to each other to a certain extent. The only difference was that some aristocratic families were more low-key, some were more unscrupulous, and some were more influential. But aristocratic families knew each other and had a good relationship with each other. For example, the Zhang family and the Song family had a close relationship. They knew each other well. In the big house, Madame Zhang Lilanfang had a call with Grandpa Song. Really? That's good. Your precious granddaughter is safe now. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll do something earth-shattering again. Madame Zhang was now talking with Song Tianyu about the attack on Song Ying. After all, she knew what Song Tianyu's reaction was when the daughter of the Song family was murdered. Since then, the Song family was blacklisted by the Hua state, because the Song family was too dangerous. I don't dare to do it again. If it happens again, I'm afraid they won't let me step into the country even if you help me. Song Tianyu's voice was a bit bitter. Zhang Lilanfang understood the feeling of leaving home. That year, she left the capital as an orphan and a widow. Okay, let's talk about business, Zhang Lilanfang said. We've prepared the preliminary work of the Imperial Mausoleum. How about your men? If it's possible, I can use my channels to bring him in. I'll go back next week. Song Tianyu said seriously. The men have been selected. But before that, I need to go back to the ancestral grave of the Song family. I haven't been back for many years. I need to go back and have a look. You're the descendant of your eldest brother. I see. Go ahead. I'll control the progress of the development. Anyway, the map provider seems to have some problems this time. But it should be solved. Thank you, Madam Li. Song Tianyu smiled and suddenly said, Madam Li, I have to go now. I have a guest. Song Tianyu hung up the phone. At this time, Uncle Wu knocked at the door and came in. Master, Bai Shuideng said he found the remaining member of the family who killed the eldest miss in Zhonghua Street. Let him in. And call the eldest young master. Chapter 936. The light in the cell was adjusted to a very dark level. However, for vampires who hated sunlight, they obviously did not feel energized at this moment. Because it was daytime outside. The biological clock that was completely different from that of humans made Gloria, whose power was imprisoned, feel very tired and hungry. She even felt cold. This was because the ability of vampires was sealed. Even if she drank blood, the special organs that could not work could not transform the blood into the physical strength needed by vampires. Or, even if it could be transformed, it was a very inefficient transformation. She was like an addicted person who was addicted to the poison called blood. Her body could not resist the dependence on blood. This should have led to madness. But in Gloria's current situation, her mind was clear. It was because she was conscious that she felt more uncomfortable about the food given by the man in front of her. Song Hauran would come once a day. After asking some questions, he would cut his palm and leave some food for Gloria. Later, he would even bring a pen and paper to write down some important things that Gloria said. So, even if vampires are immortal, food is also a factor that restricts their development. Song Hauran's fingers twirled the ballpoint pen. Where are the farms of the 13 clans? I mean, the various residences of the pure-blooded humans. This was already related to the important secrets of the 13 clans. Gloria gritted her teeth at this time. While resisting the pain caused by hunger, she hesitated whether to be frank or not. Because, during this period, she had exposed too many things that should not be known to ordinary people under this man's questioning. Strictly speaking, Gloria had committed the crime of betraying her race. What was worse, she belonged to the monitoring organization of the 13 clans, which was equivalent to an additional crime. At this time, Gloria curled up in the corner between the window and the wall, hugging her body. Her face was pale and she shivered a few times. The fangs that vampires use to suck blood had already been exposed. I don't know. This is confidential, not something that I can know at my level. You really don't know? Song Howren suddenly smiled evilly, then took the remote control placed next to him and pressed one of the buttons. At this moment, the window on one side of the cell slowly opened, and the red light of the rising sun shone in. Under the light they could see the dust dancing in the air. As the window opened, the light gradually began to spread to Gloria's body. She suddenly shivered and curled herself up even more tightly. When the sunlight spread from the bed to her feet, Gloria even shrank her toes in horror. Her pink toenails glowed with a touch of sparkling light because of the existence of the sunlight. I only know one. It's my family's breeding ground. I don't know anything else. Gloria was still afraid of direct sunlight after all. Song Howren smiled and pressed the stop button. The spread of sunlight instantly stopped in front of Gloria's toes, but the window was not closed, and the golden light was still in front of Gloria. Her entire body was still shrinking in fear. Not only did the feeling of nervousness not subside, but it grew stronger and stronger. Where is it? Emo. Brother Luo. Gloria's voice trembled. Song Howren said indifferently, be more specific. Tangier. After sailing east from Tangier, about half a day later, there's a small island. After Song Howren wrote this down, he glanced at Gloria's appearance at this time, and then closed the window. As the sunlight faded, Gloria's tense expression finally relaxed slightly. Song Howren suddenly said at this time, I won't be back for a few days, and then I'll come again. Then I'll leave for a while. But don't worry, I'll get someone to send you 3 meals a day. Gloria still looked at Song Howren in fear. It seemed ridiculous that a vampire was afraid of a human, but this man had such an ability. With that said, Song Howren took out a small dagger, then held the blade in his palm and gently pulled it out. There was a glass cup under his clenched fist. The bright red blood formed a line and gradually filled the cup. Gloria's lips couldn't help but open. The cup was soon filled to the brim. Song Howren stood up and held his wrist while smiling. This is your breakfast. Oh no, it should be a midnight snack for you. Enjoy it. He was about to leave. But before he could completely leave, Gloria had already given up letting her rationality suppress her instincts. She climbed out of bed, rushed to the cup, and drank it all in one gulp without hesitation. After drinking the cup of blood, Gloria let her body fall to the ground. After drinking blood, vampires would have a very short period of pleasure. For them, it was almost the greatest enjoyment. Song Howren looked at this scene with interest and chuckled. Although I've seen it several times, every time I see you like this, I have an impulse to experience it. This extreme pleasure. Gloria slowly opened her eyes and stared blankly at the ceiling. She lay motionless on the ground and suddenly said, You are not a normal person. Song Howren shrugged. Why do you say that? Gloria still didn't move, but her eyes were moving. They moved to Song Howren's body from top to bottom. A normal person's wound can't heal so quickly. A normal person can't take it after bleeding for so many days. Maybe I'm born with a better physique. Song Howren smiled casually and turned to open the door. Goodbye, Miss Gloria. It's really a pleasure to discuss vampires with you. After the steel door closed, Gloria slowly stood up. She glanced at the surveillance camera in the corner. This thing would automatically close when Song Howren came in, but once he left, it would open again. At this time, Gloria walked to the end of the bed and sat down. The surveillance camera could only see Gloria's body at the end of the bed, but it couldn't see her palm quietly stretched to the foot of the bed at this time. The single bed in this cell was directly made of steel. At this time, Gloria's fingers were twisting a screw at the foot of the bed. But she lowered her head and showed no expression. After leaving the cell, the wound on Song Howren's palm had healed. He casually shook his palm and didn't feel the numbness caused by excessive bleeding. It turns out that it's judged by the healing speed and the amount of bleeding. Song Howren muttered, I thought it was because of the blood. Does that mean my blood is still human blood? He was thinking about something that happened to him, but Gloria couldn't give him any useful clues. Perhaps he could consult Mr. Blind, but Song Howren did not plan to reveal the secret of his immortality. Immortality? Could Mr. Blind's Tao heart resist this kind of temptation? While thinking, Song Howren's cell phone rang. It was Oni who called, saying that the car was ready and they could leave at any time. Later, he would go to Zhonghua Street with Bai Shuetang to find out what happened to the remnant. Of course, eldest young Master Song would not be the only one in danger. Earlier, there was already a group of people quietly heading there. I'll come over later. Song Howren stopped and turned off the phone, then walked to the courtyard next to him. This was the place where his father kept his books, a study like a hall. Without a doubt, Song Howren met Luochio, who got up early. In my humble home, Luochio could be found here if there was nothing important. This nephew Gu had a scholarly aura that made people feel comfortable. This made Song Howren think of the grassland below the snowy peak. It was vast and peaceful. Are you used to it? Song Howren's voice came in before he stepped through the door. Luochio, who was reading a book of poems, put down his hand and asked curiously, "What do you mean?" Song Howren smiled. "A beautiful woman is studying. Without a beautiful woman by your side, I'm asking you if you're used to it. If you're not used to it, I'll find you another one later. I promise she won't be worse than Gone Hong." "What's the matter?" Luochio asked casually. "Oh, you're obviously avoiding the question, but why are you so natural every time?" Song Howren walked in helplessly, and suddenly his heart moved. "Luochio, do you want to go out with me?" "That's fine." Luochio nodded. "But, are we going to do something?" "No, I just want you to follow me." Song Howren smiled. "Because, I suddenly have a feeling that as long as I take you with me, good luck will come. Anyway, you have nothing to do, right?" "Premonition?" Song Howren nodded. "You don't know?" "My premonition is very accurate. Come on, don't be a bookworm, I'll take you to play something fun." Wait for me to pack up." Luochio got up, put the poetry collection back to its original place, and put out the burning sandalwood. After putting away the teapot and teacups, he walked out with Song Howren unhurriedly. "But, as long as I take you with me, good luck will come." Has he become a mascot? Bai Shuetang didn't expect the Song family to act so quickly. Early in the morning, the eldest son of the Song family, Song Howren, asked him to personally take him to Zhonghua Street. In addition, what surprised Bai Shuetang even more was that this time, the Master Chiu, that the servant mentioned accompanied him. About this Master Chiu, Bai Shuetang quietly asked an old acquaintance in the house later in the night, and found that even the old staff didn't know much. They only knew that this person came back with the eldest son, Song Howren, and entered the morning hall on the first day of his return. Later, old Master Song announced his identity. The servants had a lot of guesses about Master Chiu's identity, but Bai Shuetang thought more. Song Tianyou's thoughts were almost a set of traditional etiquette. Even Song Ying was not allowed to enter a place like the morning hall unless it was an important day. The fact that Master Chiu directly entered the morning hall surprised Bai Shuetang. This meant that this Master Chiu was recognized as a real male of the Song family. But this is good. Bai Shuetang sat in the car. He came in with a gloomy face. He glanced at the car behind him in the rearview mirror. Song Howren and Luochio were both in this car. Bai Shuetang sneered and took out the phone from his clothes. After a long time, the person on the other side of the phone was finally willing to answer. It was Basil's voice. "Basil." Bai Shuetang looked at the driver indifferently. When he called out the driver's name, he could see the driver's shoulders shake a little. "What else do you want from me?" "I've said that I won't continue to cooperate with a treacherous guy like you." "Basil, the guy who is driving me now, is it you who put him beside me?" Bai Shuetang sneered and said, "You probably already know that I went to my house. You in the front, you better not slow down the car, or the people behind will be suspicious." The phone was silent for a while. After a while, Basil spoke again on the phone. Bai Shuatang, what are you planning? At this time, Bai Shuatang said indifferently, I guess you must be thinking that after you and I fell out, I immediately went to find that old fox Song Tianyu in order to protect myself and tell him about you, right? Basil sneered. Do I need to guess? Bai Shuatang snorted. Basil, you look down on me too much. My purpose of going to my humble home was not to protect myself, but to lure people out. But I thought it would take at least one day for the Song family to make a move, but I didn't expect that the Song family could not sit still. You mean Song Howren? Bai Shuatang said in a low voice. Wait, I'll take him to your hiding place. Whether you can kill him or not, it depends on your ability. Basil, my gift is sincere enough, right? You'd better not play any tricks on me. Bazir coldly snorted before continuing, however, if we can really get rid of Song Howren this time, our cooperation can continue. I hope so. The phone was cut off after a few seconds. Bai Shuatang looked at the driver in the rearview mirror. The driver seemed to find that Bai Shuatang was looking at him, so he turned his eyes to the front. Bai Shuatang said, Basil is pretty smart. At least he knows to find a Chinese, and not a foreigner to lower my guard. The driver wanted to say something, but he suddenly froze, because when he looked at the rearview mirror again, he found that Bai Shuatang already had a small pistol in his hand. His arm was resting on his thigh, and the muzzle of the pistol was pointing up slightly. If he shot from this distance, President Bai. Let's talk nicely. How much did Basil give you? I'll give you double. How about it? Bai Shuatang said suddenly. I still lack a dog, do you want to do it? President, thinking about it, you're quite young. Are your parents still alive? What about your family? Have you bought insurance? If you don't tell me, I can find out. It's just a waste of time. The driver's forehead broke out in cold sweat. He hurriedly said, President Bai, I'll bite whoever you ask me to. Bai Shuatang smiled and said indifferently, Drive, be careful. Yen PS1. Thank you to Under the Parasol Tree, the leg accessory named Whitestone is ready. Thank you to the digital book friend 20170-42800-570-7291, the sect leader. 0/1 PS3. And the previous 2/3. Chapter 937. That morning, Song Ying returned to work in the Song dynasty as usual. On one hand, it was because old Master Song had ordered her to return to the country, so she needed to arrange the internal affairs of the group in a short period of time. This was a task with a lot of work. On the other hand, the news of Song Ying's attack had more or less spread. In addition, she had been detained in the hospital for a while, so she hadn't appeared in front of the employees of the Song dynasty group for a long time. Thus, she had a reason to come back. Of course, after experiencing these things, Song Ying was much more well-behaved than before. Moreover, old Master Song had even assigned Songda to be her bodyguard. In addition, there was also a small team selected from the village that had been hiding in the dark. The best way to break a rumor was to break the rumor itself. From the moment Song Ying appeared in the group in high spirits, the rumors that Miss Song Ying was seriously injured and on the verge of death were unfairly dismissed. Can't find him? In the office, Song Ying frowned as she looked at her secretary, Su Mei. She was reporting to Song Ying that an employee of the finance department couldn't be found. There was a leave slip on the table. But I asked the department head, and he said there was no word on it. Su Mei quickly said, Also, we checked the accountant's computer and found that all the information on it had been formatted. What did the Internal Affairs Department say? Song Ying's fingers kept tapping on the table. I'm afraid he absconded with the money. Su Mei said solemnly, because the money that was going to be sent to the bank that day all disappeared. Song Ying snorted coldly, scaring Su Mei into silence. The accountant's sudden disappearance and the hotel's turnover that day had been stolen. These things had happened after Su Mei had asked Accountant Yu to provide the accounts of Zhonghua Street's expenses in recent years. It seems we can only ask the president of the Chamber of Commerce. There should be a backup. Song Ying shook her head. Su Mei hurriedly said, "Then I'll inform President Bai right away and have him make preparations." Song Ying bit her lip and suddenly said, "No need. After the emergency meeting, prepare the car and I'll go directly. You'd better not tell anyone." Su Mei nodded. It seemed Miss Song Ying was planning a surprise visit. Indeed, if there really was a problem, only a surprise visit like this could lead to some clues. "Miss, you haven't had breakfast yet, right? I'll get someone to prepare it for you." Su Mei continued, "There's still some time before the meeting. There's still work today. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on if I don't eat something." Song Ying had indeed left early today. It was only early in the morning when she left. She was actually the first person to wake up in the Song family almost every day. Alright, let's get something to eat." Song Ying nodded. Su Mei said, "Is Benedict's egg with black coffee okay?" This was the breakfast that Song Ying usually ate. As a secretary, Su Mei had already memorized it. Unexpectedly, Song Ying suddenly said, "I don't want to eat this today. Let's eat porridge. I want to eat something lighter today, so plain porridge will do." "Su Mei, the porridge you made last time was pretty good. It was that kind of porridge, right? What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Su Mei was stunned for a moment. Then, under Song Ying's puzzled gaze, she quickly said, "Okay, I'll go prepare it right away." Su Mei quickly left the office. When she closed the door, she saw that Song Ying had begun to look down at the documents piled up on the desk. "Oh no, I was too sleepy at that time. I can't remember the steps clearly. But if it's just plain porridge, the cooking method should be similar. There should be no problem." Su Mei walked toward the kitchen absent-mindedly. Not long after Su Mei left, a senior manager in the Song Dynasty Hotel knocked on the door and came in. It wasn't anything important. He just brought a request from environmentalists and a plan. "Miss Ying, the initiator of this plan is Mr. Quaddick. You know, Mr. Quaddick's ancestors are great aristocrats. He has a lot of friends with powerful people. He is an environmentalist, so we need to give him some face more or less. A joint letter to rectify all the unqualified factories that discharge serious pollutants?" Song Ying flipped through a few pages and then threw it aside without interest. "You can do it. Anyway, we don't have much in the heavy industry. But these environmentalists are really troublesome, so if you see what else they need, just give them some as appropriate. Maybe they will be useful in the future." Green Guardian, this banner has already been used? They are really bored." Song Ying shook her head and didn't care much. The senior manager was authorized to deal with it and left the office directly. At this moment, only Songda and Song Ying were left in the office. Songda was sitting on the sofa with his eyes closed. He seemed to be doing exercises like breathing exercises. Song Ying was actually not very used to working with someone who couldn't help her. But her grandfather, Song Tianyu, had already said that even if Songda went to the toilet, he had to wait outside. At this time, Song Ying received an international long-distance call. It was a woman's voice. Song Ying just remembered that she had asked one of her assistants to go to China in advance. But too many things had happened in the past half a month, and she almost forgot about it. "How's it going?" Song Ying asked casually. "Miss Ying, I have successfully sneaked into this editorial office. I used the identity of a foreign graduate and have completed the entry procedures. I can officially start work tomorrow." "Very good." Song Ying nodded. "I will find a chance to get close to the target tomorrow. Miss Ying, don't worry, I will definitely expose the true face of this liar." Well, actually, Song Ying opened her mouth. Earlier, she secretly sent someone to China. In fact, she planned to start from the place where Luochu lived, investigate this guy inside and out, and evaluate this guy's character. But now there was no doubt about whether Luochio was really a member of the Song family. Song Ying really didn't know how to cancel this order suddenly. Missing, actually what? Song Ying quietly glanced at Songda, then cleared her throat and said, "Nothing, you did a good job. Just continue with the original plan. If you need anything, contact me." Okay. Song Ying breathed a sigh of relief. After all, that guy saved her in Gan Hong. It seemed that he really didn't want anything. Bastard, all you do is say strange and inexplicable things all day long. At this time, the office door was knocked again. Secretary Su Mei came in with a bowl of porridge and asked the chef to make some Chinese fried dough stick. Song Ying, who had been busy since early in the morning, was famished and immediately started eating. However, she suddenly stopped after taking 2 mouthfuls of the porridge. She looked up at Su Mei in confusion. "This tastes a little different?" "Ah? That was impossible. I'm just following." Su Mei was shocked and subconsciously covered her mouth. "Following what?" "No, nothing, I said to follow the step." Su Mei quickly explained. "Su Mei, are you hiding something from me?" Song Ying's expression suddenly became cold. Su Mei was shocked and had to tell the truth. "I'm sorry, Miss Ying. The porridge that morning wasn't made by me. Actually, it was made by young Master Luochio himself. He was afraid that you wouldn't eat it and worried that you would be hungry after staying up all night, so he asked me to send it to you. I didn't mean to lie to you, sorry. That bastard." This was the 3rd time that Luochio came to Zhonghua Street. When he asked about the fruit shop the first time, the shop assistant who was playing with his phone actually recognized him. Most importantly, he recognized Song Haoran. "Persimmons. I bought some persimmons this time. Do you still want to buy them this time?" He even remembered what Song Haoran and Luochio wanted to buy that time. Song Haoran seemed to be in a good mood. He walked into the shop and came out with a paper bag of persimmons in his hand. When it was time to pay, the shop assistant found that Bai Shuitang, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, was standing next to him, so he hurriedly said that this bag of persimmons was free. Song Haoran didn't give him any more and took this small advantage, without any pressure. He didn't seem to see the shop assistant's frightened expression when he saw Bai Shuitang. Instead, he laughed and said, "President Bai, it seems that I'm basking in your glory. Your reputation is really useful on Zhonghua Street." Bai Shuitang completely understood the meaning behind his words. He thought that Song Haoran would directly go to the destination, but he didn't expect that after coming to Zhonghua Street, Song Haoran would leisurely stroll around the street. Song Haoran took out a persimmon from the bag. After peeling it, he started to gnaw on it and gave one to Luochio. "It's quite sweet, try it." "You're right." Luochio didn't hold back at all. At this time, Bai Shuitang walked to Song Haoran's side and whispered, "Master, I think it's about time. I'm afraid they'll find you if you stay here for too long. If they run away, it'll be difficult to find them next time." Song Haoran nodded. "That's true. Where's the place you just mentioned?" Bai Shuitang said, "It's in a restaurant not far from the back street. They've been eyeing a house for a long time. The name of the restaurant is Heavenly Fragrance House." Song Haoran nodded, turning back and saying, "Did you hear that? Heavenly Fragrance House, they've killed them." Oni, who was following behind Song Haoran, grinned grimly and said, "Okay, I'll go now." Saying this, Oni walked into the crowd and took out his phone. No one knew what he was saying. Bai Shuitang wanted to listen, but he was already far away. Song Haoran put his arm around Luochio's shoulder and said with a cheeky smile, "Just a few small fries, let's wait for the good news here. President Bai, don't you think so?" "Of course." Bai Shuitang smiled. "I was too nervous, thinking that you were going to do it yourself. Haha. Actually, this is good too. Let's wait for the good news. Why don't we go to the tea house in front to have some tea? At this time, we can still listen to a song. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" Song Haoran said, "I don't like to listen to dramas. President Bai, is that place still open?" "Which place?" Bai Shuetang didn't react for a while. Song Haoran narrowed his eyes and smiled. The Red House. Today, I specially brought my Luoqiu out, intending to take him to the Red House to have some fun. The matter of arresting people is just in passing. Before Bai Shuetang could reply, Luoqiu asked curiously, "What kind of place is the Red House?" Song Haoran said craftily, "In the words of ancient times, it's a brothel. Aren't you very excited?" Luoqiu stared blankly. Of course he knew what a brothel meant. It was just that he had never been to such a place. "What, you don't like it?" "Not really, then let's go." Luoqiu thought for a while and then agreed. It was Song Haoran's turn to be greatly astonished, and he said incredulously, "That's strange, I thought you would directly skip the topic and pretend you didn't hear me. I didn't expect you to actually agree. This is really beyond my expectations. You don't play by the rules, do you?" Luoqiu said casually, "I thought maybe I could see a lotus in the mud. In that case, there's no reason to refuse." "Is that so?" Song Haoran thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Growing out of the mud but remaining untainted, so this is the type you like? But it's easy to find someone who looks pure, but it's hard to find someone who's also pure on the inside. Let's do our best and leave the rest to fate. President Bai, aren't you going to lead the way? My old man treats this nephew of mine like a treasure, don't let him down. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. Eldest young Master Chiu, please come with me, I'll have someone prepare it right away." Bai Shuetang pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses with a fawning look on his face. Then, he made a phone call and said seriously, "Hello, it's me. Go to the Red House right away and get it ready for me. Say that I have a VIP who wants to play inside, and have Mother bring out the best treasures. Remember, it's the most important VIP, don't slight him." It didn't take long before Bai Shuetang said with a smile, "Eldest young master, I've already sent someone to get it ready. How about we go over now?" "There's no hurry." Song Haoran suddenly shook his head. "In any case, since we're already here, I'll go over to the Chamber of Commerce building and light a few incense sticks first. The more I pray for, the gods will bless me." "That's true," Bai Shuetang continued to agree. But to Song Haoran's surprise, as soon as they arrived at the entrance of the Chamber of Commerce, they ran into Song Ying at the entrance. This time, Song Ying had come in a group bus. Song De and Su Mei had also gotten out of the bus, followed closely by the group of people who were in charge of protecting Song Ying today. "Uncle and..." Song Ying pursed her lips and skipped over the word, "and." "Why are you here?" Song Haoran's gaze shifted as he said, "Luoqiu said his stomach wasn't feeling well and he wanted to grab some Chinese medicine or something, so I accompanied him here. What about you? Why are you looking for President Bai?" Song Ying stealthily glanced at Luoqiu, who was slowly walking over from behind, but when she met Luoqiu's gaze, she quickly turned to Bai Shuetang. "Second uncle, there's something I want to ask you about. Do you have time?" "This." Bai Shuetang looked at Song Haoran a little awkwardly. Song Haoran shrugged and said, "President Bai, business is more important. Xiao Ying is looking for you for work, so help her with it first." "Then okay." Bai Shuetang simply nodded. "Xiao Ying, come with me. Let's go to my office first." Song Ying nodded. At this moment, Luoqiu just happened to arrive. When he saw Song Ying, he directly greeted her. "Song Ying, you're here too." Song Ying glared at Luoqiu grumpily. Seeing that he was still holding a persimmon in his hand, she said, "Eating a persimmon when your stomach isn't feeling well, you deserve the pain." "Luoqiu." Song Ying snorted lightly, then directly followed Bai Shuetang in. At that moment, Luoqiu looked at Song Haoran. "Your stomach isn't feeling well?" "Her stomach isn't feeling well today." Song Haoran's face was serious. "She's in a bad mood." Chapter 938. When he saw the exaggerated Buddha statue in the lobby of the Chamber of Commerce, Luoqiu suddenly asked curiously, "So this Buddha statue was arranged by Mr. Blind?" The Buddha statue was placed at a special angle, as was the life gate of the Chamber of Commerce. It's not a Buddha statue, but a friend of Mr. Blind's from Nanyang. Song Howren was lighting an incense, speaking of which, Mr. Blind always says that Buddhism and Taoism are of the same origin, so he looks like a Taoist, but he doesn't reject Buddhism at all. You seem to believe in these things. Luocio glanced at the Buddha statue again. Song Howren put his palms together, and the incense was held between his fingers. He closed his eyes and bowed a few times in a pious manner, then inserted the incense into the incense burner. Actually, I don't believe in these things. Song Howren chuckled. If there is a God in this world, then the God must be me. Because only I can make myself do the impossible. Therefore, I'm bowing to myself. Luocio sized up Song Howren and suddenly said, That's right, only when you have your own God living in your heart can you succeed in everything. Song Howren was very happy that Luocio didn't destroy his confidence, and at the same time, he sized up Luocio. Then what about you? What is the God living in your heart? Luocio didn't know how to answer this question. He thought carefully and said with uncertainty, Probably, it can only be me. Song Howren didn't continue asking, but said indifferently, Let's wait here for Bai Shuetang to come down. He walked towards the resting area of the Chamber of Commerce. Luocio looked at Song Howren's back. He could already see a faintly discernible huge shadow enveloping Song Howren all the time. There really is a God living here. Second uncle, what do you think? Song Ying looked directly at Bai Shuetang. Unlike Song Howren and Song Tianyo's attitude towards Bai Shuetang, Song Ying was actually closer to him. After all, Bai Shuetang was her father's younger brother. Although Song Ying's father had married into the Song family, he was still on the father's side and was the representative of the Bai family. Although Song Ying's feelings for Bai Shuetang were not as deep as Old Master Song and Song Howren, she still remembered the things that happened when they were young. Bai Shuetang was indeed very good to her back then. However, Song Ying did not interact much with the other members of the Bai family. There were not many outsiders in the office, so Bai Shuetang seemed to be more relaxed now. Xiaoying, you said that Yu Huiji falsified the accounts of Zhonghua Street and absconded with the money. Is there something wrong with this? Song Ying did not intend to discuss the details of this matter with Bai Shuetang. There were still a lot of things waiting for her in the company, so she said directly, absconding shouldn't be wrong. As for the fake accounts, I personally found them. If Yu Huiji didn't have a problem, why did all the information on his computer disappear when he disappeared? And what you said makes sense. Bai Shuetang nodded, but it's so sudden that I can't prepare for it in a short time. It doesn't matter. You can make up for it later. Song Ying said decisively, Now, bring the account books that you can find first. I'll check them directly here. Now? Bai Shuetang frowned. Song Ying said, Why, second uncle, is there a problem? Bai Shuetang shook his head and said, No, I'm just afraid that your body can't take it. But since you said it, you can definitely do it. Second uncle believes in you. After all, you're very good at mental arithmetic. You've been a child prodigy since you were a child. Then I'll have to trouble second uncle. Song Ying smiled slightly. I'll ask someone to get it. You wait here for a while. Bai Shuetang said at this time, By the way, Xiaoying, why don't you wait here? I'll go and say hello to young master first. What do you think? Song Ying waved her hand and said, It's okay. You go and accompany my uncle. Just leave someone to find the things for me. If there are accounts that I'm not clear about, I'll ask you later. Okay, I'll listen to you. Bai Shuetang nodded. He quickly found his secretary and asked her to lead Song Ying and others to the finance department of the Chamber of Commerce. After a while, only Bai Shuetang was left in the office. His face suddenly became gloomy. Why did this girl come here today? Bai Shuetang's thoughts actually changed a little at this time, and these changes started because he met Luocio in his humble home. At first, Bai Shuai-tang thought that as long as he got rid of Song Tianyu, Song Haoran and Song Ying, he would have a great chance to occupy the apparent wealth of the Song family, the behemoth Song dynasty. However, Luoqiu suddenly appeared in his humble home, which made Bai Shuai-tang vigilant. Since the Song family had a male descendant like Luoqiu, did it mean that the Song family had other direct descendants outside who had more legitimate conditions than him? Taking this into consideration, Bai Shuai-tang had to make a temporary change to his original plan. Instead of benefiting the other hidden heirs of the Song family, it was better to benefit Song Ying directly. As long as Song Ying fully took over the Song dynasty, he, as Song Ying's biological uncle, could manipulate a lot of things. Moreover, if Song Ying could further take over the power of the iris flower in the mysterious village of the Song family, let's see whether Basil can directly take down Song Haoran today. Bai Shuai-tang revealed a cold smile. Then he tidied up his clothes and hurried to the lobby of the Chamber of Commerce. When Bai Shuai-tang arrived at the lobby lounge, he happened to see Song Haoran's happy face. He directly asked curiously, "Eldest young master, is there anything to be happy about?" Seeing that it was Bai Shuai-tang, Song Haoran waved his hand and motioned for Bai Shuai-tang to sit down. "President Bai, the information you gave is correct. Just now, Oni gave me a reply. Our people directly broke into the hiding place of this group of remnant. There were 4 of them. We killed 2 of them and captured the other 2. How can I not be happy? This is indeed very good news." Bai Shuai-tang cheered up at this time. "Master said that you have always been the deputy general. As long as you set out, there's nothing you can't do. I think this is not wrong at all." Song Haoran laughed and said, "Yes, things are going so smoothly. God is also helping me, but it's a pity that we didn't find Basil this time. Looks like he's also lucky to have escaped this time." Bai Shuai-tang said indifferently, "Since we captured the 2 of them alive, then we can definitely force Basil's whereabouts out of them. We don't have to worry." "I think so too," Song Haoran said confidently. "Basil is now like a rat crossing the street. He won't dare to appear in the short term. President Bai, we can celebrate for a while. Song Ying asked you to do, have you settled the matter?" "I've already arranged it. Don't worry, eldest young master," Bai Shuai-tang said in a low voice. "Also, the Red Chamber is ready. What do you think? Let's go together." Song Haoran slapped his thigh and stood up. "President Bai, let's not talk about our families being relatives. If the girl is not good later, I will definitely punish you." Of course. Bai Shuai-tang hurriedly smiled apologetically. "If it's really not good, then I'll stop here. I'll drink a bottle of Mao Tai. Domineering. I like people like you, ha. Song Haoran patted Bai Shuai-tang's shoulder, then rubbed his hands and said, "Then let's go." Song Haoran was dissolute by nature, lustful, and a veteran in the field of pleasure. Almost everyone knew this. Bai Shuai-tang narrowed his eyes and smiled apologetically all the way out. In a small meeting in the finance department of the Chamber of Commerce building, the secretary moved a thick stack of account books in front of Song Ying. "Missing, these are copies of last year's account books. Do you want to take a look at these first? We're sorting out the rest." Song Ying nodded, then glanced at the secretary. She noticed that her collar was a little low, but she didn't say anything and only gave an indifferent Song Ying casually opened one of the account books and glanced at it. However, her fingers suddenly stopped typing on the computer. Song Ying seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked at Songda, who was sitting in a chair against the wall. "Songda, your stomach hurts. Is there any use for taking Chinese medicine?" Songda opened his eyes with a look of surprise, then said awkwardly, "That? Missing, why don't you ask your wife about this?" "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about a normal stomach ache. It's not what you think it is. Dirty." Song Ying glared at him fiercely. "Then why did you add Master Chiu as the subject in front of your name? It should be effective." Song De could only reply in grievance. Do you want me to ask Blind for some pills? No need. Song Ing lowered her head expressionlessly and continued to look at the account books. However, not long after, Song Ing raised her head a little absent-mindedly. Right, where is my second uncle going? I have a feeling that they're hiding something from me. Should it be called a woman's sixth sense? From the beginning, Song Ing had felt that Song Haoran was a little strange. This missing, I'm not too sure either, because the president didn't tell me. Song Ing said indifferently, did he not tell you, or did he forbid you from telling me? Missing, I really don't know. The secretary looked at Song Ing with some grievance. It was said that this Miss Ing of the Song dynasty was temperamental and very difficult to serve. All right, since you don't know, then go and find out for me. Song Ing glanced at the watch on her wrist. Give me an answer in half an hour. If you still don't know, then your year-end bonus for this year will be cancelled. Missing, aren't you making things difficult for me? The secretary felt that the scales were tilting in her heart, but she still struggled bitterly. What? Song Ing suddenly sneered. According to the rules, President Bai is also an employee of the Song dynasty, which means he's my subordinate. Don't tell me that as the boss, I'm not allowed to know what my employees are doing at work? Are you planning to rebel? I don't dare. The secretary's face instantly turned ghastly pale. The employee benefits and treatment of the Song dynasty group were really too good. This was a job that many people would fight to keep. At this moment, the secretary clenched her teeth. After weighing the pros and cons, she finally succumbed to the despotic power of the group's boss. The secretary bent down and whispered in Song Ying's ear, Miss Ing, you mustn't say it was me who said it. Actually, the president is taking eldest young Master Song and his companions to the Red House in the back street to play. What? As soon as she heard this, Song Ing was burning with rage. She slapped the table fiercely and almost roared, I'm so tired from working here, and they actually dare to go to a brothel. Miss Ing, don't get agitated. The secretary was instantly alarmed. This Miss Ying's voice was so shockingly loud. She didn't know if the people in the corridor outside heard it. No. Unexpectedly, Song Ing didn't listen to her at all. Instead, she suddenly stood up and clenched her fist. Good, your nature has been revealed. You're really a pervert. You finally can't help but expose yourself. If I don't catch you on the spot, I'll take my father's surname. Song De, let's go. Okay, Song De weakly rubbed his forehead and stood up. Speaking of which, isn't it natural for a daughter to take her father's surname? Miss Ing, what about this account? It's so much. Su Mei hurriedly reminded her. You calculate it yourself first. Song Ing hurriedly said and directly strode out of the door of this small conference room. The decoration style of this red house was like that of a brothel in the 40s or 50s of the last century. Basically, the girls were wearing slim cheongsams and holding fans in their hands, swaying gracefully. When he just entered the door, Luochio smelled a strong rouge smell. Then, he saw a middle-aged woman holding a slender opium pipe slowly walk out from behind the beaded curtain. She smiled and greeted people. This should be similar to the procuress in this red house. The procuress very warmly came to Bai Shuetang and leaned on him, saying in a tired voice, President, you haven't come here for a long time. Have you changed to a new place? Bai Shuetang somewhat awkwardly smiled. As a subordinate, it was common to take the boss to this kind of place, but it didn't mean that the boss would like his employees to come here often. Fortunately, Song Haoran didn't have any displeasure. Bai Shuetang then cleared his throat and said, Today, I've brought 2 VIPs here. You have to treat them well until they are satisfied. Chinese style or Western style, it's up to you to choose. The procuress smiled and said, It just so happens that a few chicks have come these days. They're not bad. Since they are your VIPs, you just need to give them a *** red packet. Drinks are all waived. Madam really knows how to do business. Song Haoran suddenly chuckled. I'm just afraid that this asterisk red packet won't be small, right? You are the president's VIP. Do you still care about this small amount of money? We're just running a small business here. The people who do this business are all poor women. Please don't make things difficult for us. Haha, yes, I have a lot of money. As long as it can make me happy, it's not a problem. Song Howren waved his hand, looking like a prodigal. But at this moment, he looked at Luocio with a sly gaze. Thinking of the procuress's words, Luocio probably understood what Song Howren was thinking. Luocio gently shook his head. Suddenly, his gaze froze and then he said, "Where is the washroom?" "In front." "I'll let someone lead you there, VIP." The procuress quickly called a waiter and led Luocio out. Then, she personally led Song Howren and Bai Shuetang to the best private room in this red house. "I'll go in by myself." In front of the washroom, Luocio said indifferently to the waiter. The waiter was very obedient. He smiled and stood outside the door to wait. Luocio didn't say anything and walked in directly. However, a few seconds later, Luocio walked out again, but the waiter waiting at the door acted as if he didn't see anything. He directly took out his phone and looked at it. Instead of deliberately going to the private room where Song Howren and the others were, Luocio walked into the kitchen work area of the Red House at this time. Just now, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure who was staggering past. At this time, in the kitchen area of the Red House, a young woman was sitting on a low stool, sweating profusely. She bent over and washed the dishes in a big basin. Chapter 939. In addition to the bowls and plates in the basin, there were many bowls, plates, cups, and chopsticks waiting to be washed on the table next to them. Judging from the number of tableware, one could at least tell that this place had a good business and was very wasteful. There were a few fresh-keeping bags on the side containing some meat. It seemed that Yuna had picked them out from the untouched dishes. Perhaps she was going to take them away later. Yuna did not wash the bowls and chopsticks quickly and could even be said to be clumsy. She wore red latex gloves, and sometimes she could not even hold the plates firmly. She could not even wipe her sweat, and could only make do with her arm. "You can't wash it clean like this." Just as she lost her grip on a plate and let it slide into the basin, Yuna heard a voice behind her that she seemed to have heard somewhere before. She subconsciously turned back to look at the young man who had stood behind her without her noticing. Yuna recognized him at first glance. It was the long-winded waiter who had pushed the cart of Cantonese pastries to her in the tea-house. "It's you," Yuna replied with some surprise. She was surprised because the Red Chamber was, to put it bluntly, a money-squandering establishment. With the salary of a waiter in a tea-house, even the lowest expenditure in the Red Chamber would be exorbitant. Luocio just smiled casually, then walked to Yuna and squatted down. At the same time, he pinched up his sleeves and picked up a rag and a plate. "Watch carefully." Yuna found that the young man was not wiping the plates carelessly, but was wiping them regularly on a large area without repeating himself. This kind of dishwashing agent is actually very useful because it doesn't need to be rinsed with water. Just wipe it a few times with a rag and it's done. Also, you can consider washing the big plates first, then stacking them. First the plates, then the bowls. Don't just grab them one by one. That will save a lot of space. After all, this place is not big. If you don't stack them properly, it's easy to break them. Oh, leave the chopsticks for last. You're a dishwasher too? Yuna looked at the young man who had finished washing the plates immediately, and then realized that the clothes he was wearing did not seem to be cheap goods. The clothes were embroidered with high-quality brands, and she did not know whether they were authentic or fake. "I wash them often at home, so these are just some tips," Luocio said as he put away the only washed plate, and then shook his palm to get rid of the water stains. He didn't intend to help Yuna wash everything. He just wanted to give her some pointers. To Yuna, this was a form of respect. Seeing that Luocio had stood up, Yuna had intended to stand up as well. However, it was really inconvenient for her to move, so she could only look up and thank him. Then, she smiled bitterly and said, "In the past, it was my sister who washed the tableware at home. You know, there were many times when it was inconvenient for me. She always refused to let me into the kitchen." "Have you always been working here?" Luocio continued to look around. Yuna shook her head, grabbed a plate, and started wiping it like Luocio. "No, I just arrived today. I can't. Well, actually, people have to live." She suddenly raised her head, a very clean smile on her face. "Although it's a little dirty here, the salary is not bad. And most importantly, they are willing to hire me." "Very good." Luocio nodded. "Then I won't disturb you." "It's okay." Yuna smiled. This seemed to be a guy who could bring peace to people. The originally boring and tiring work seemed to have become a little lighter because of this guy's arrival. "By the way, I still don't know your name?" Yuna asked politely. Luocio had walked to the door at this time, but at this time, he bent down, picked up the crutch on the ground, and put it back to the wall. It should have been leaning here before, but he didn't know when it fell down. "It won't be too late to tell you next time we meet." He left just like that, without any excuse to force himself to stay, and without any intention to continue the conversation. It was as if he was just a traveler who had left after a hurried glance. Yuna heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the time. In fact, it was already lunchtime. She leaned against the wall and took the crutches. Then, she picked up a few food preservation bags, pushed the kitchen door open, and walked out. There was a small alley in front of the door. Yuna came here once when she was at work today. At this time, she was looking around, as if she was looking for something. Very soon, Yuna heard something. At this time, a smile appeared on her slightly haggard face. She held the crutch and quickly walked over, to the place where a few baskets were casually stacked. Yuna carefully took out one of the basket. Then, she poked her head in and saw a few pairs of small eyes looking at her. The sound of a cat's meowing was very tender. A mother cat was surrounded by 3 kittens. They were stray animals living here, found in the clubhouse where Yuna had just gone to work in the morning. Yuna's eyes suddenly lit up, and her smile seemed to be brighter. Then, she opened the safety bag and poured out some of the food inside. Obviously, she was going to feed the kittens and the mother cat. They seemed to be unable to resist the temptation of the food. The mother cat carefully stretched out her head, trimmed a piece of fish on the ground a few times, and then took a bite. However, it didn't swallow them. Instead, it brought them back to the basket and put them down. The 3 kittens immediately surrounded it and formed a furry ball, like a few dandelion balls that had fallen together. Yuna sat down with her hands on the wall, her hands on the baskets, and looked at them quietly. The family suddenly became very quiet and peaceful. Click. In the distance, a crisp sound of a shutter was heard. It didn't alarm Yuna. She didn't know that at this moment, her appearance had been reflected in a golden Hasselblad camera. In the distance, Luocio looked away from the camera contentedly. He held the Hasselblad camera in his hand. He didn't go through the usual drying process, but directly sucked with his hand, and a black and white photo was born. The black and white background of the photo erased the paleness on Yuna's face, leaving only her pure and sweet smile. What an unexpected gain! The quality of the girls the procuress found was indeed good. Song Hauran was a man who had seen countless girls. At this time, looking at the girls brought by the procuress, there were indeed 1 or 2 that made his eyes light up. Of course, it was just the shell in front of him. As for the thing inside the shell, it was hard to say. President Bai, the best girls in the Red House are here. It was obvious that the procuress was proud at this moment. After all, these girls had been trained for a long time. From the beginning, they were asked to show the temperament of women in that era as much as possible. "Master, is this batch okay?" Bai Shuatang saw that Song Hauran seemed to be in a good mood, so he directly approached and asked. At this time, Song Hauran casually picked 2 and said indifferently, "Leave these 2. Under the direction of the procuress, the selected girls directly walked to Song Howren's left and right side. Unexpectedly, Song Howren suddenly said, "The person you want to call is not me, but someone else. Let me tell you, when he comes back, you can." Song Howren suddenly whispered in the ear of one of the girls. This girl couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh secretly, as if she was amused by one of Song Howren's bad ideas. "This friend of mine is unfazed by favor or disgrace. I've never seen him flustered. Master Song was full of evil tricks. If you two can embarrass him later, I'll give you 5 million each. Buying a smile with 1,000 taels of gold." Unfortunately, this Master Song was buying a man's embarrassed smile. Song Howren's straightforwardness made the two girls' eyes light up. However, Bai Shuetang frowned as she listened. She thought to herself, this young master of the Song family is indeed not an ordinary prodigal. He doesn't even know how to cherish the Song family's wealth. "President Bai, your friend is back." The procuress had been paying attention to the door. At this moment, she saw Luochio slowly walking over from the corridor downstairs, so she immediately reminded him. Song Howren instantly waved his hand, and the two girls hid on either side of the door at the same time. At the same time, they unbuttoned the necklines of their chong sams, revealing half of their soft breast. 1, 2, 3. Pop! Ah! But Song Howren's originally smiling face instantly froze. What the hell? The person who pushed open the door and entered wasn't Luochio, but Song Ying. At this moment, Song Ying's eyes widened. These two girls kissed her cheeks on both sides, and they even hugged Song Ying's hands very passionately, directly pressing her down like a ball. Their slender legs even stretched out from the slit in their chong sams and stuck to Song Ying's legs, as if their entire bodies were glued to them. It was probably a very erotic scene. Before Song Ying could react to this sudden contact, she heard a calm voice behind her. Her neck stiffened as she turned around. "Luochio." "Oh." Luochio glanced at her, then uttered a very short word with a look of realization on his face. "Oh, your sister." Song Ying suddenly shuddered and screamed. She directly flung the two seductive girls away, then rushed up to Luochio and grabbed Luochio's collar at lightning speed. She roared, "Oh what? What's the meaning of looking like you've discovered a new continent? What kind of dirty thoughts are you having? Lesbian, right? Lesbian, right? Friction, right? Do you want to wipe it?" Luochio blinked and reached out to take out a pack of tissues. Song Ying was stunned and subconsciously looked at the glass window in the corridor, only to see 2 bright red lipstick marks on her own cheek. "Ah!" Song Ying suddenly screamed, then instantly raised her hand, slap. Bai Shuetang sat at the furthest place uneasily. As for Song Howren, he leaned against the back of the sofa with a mischievous smile on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. At the same time, Luochio sat without a sense of presence. Song Ying dipped the tissue in water and vigorously wiped her cheeks. Songda, on the other hand, stood to the side expressionlessly. At the same time, there was a faint handprint on his cheek. He actually looked like he had lost all hope in life because he really couldn't understand why Miss Song Ying's slap was aimed at him in the end. In that situation, young Master Luochio should have been more convenient. As for the brothel keeper and the rouge powder, Song Ying had directly kicked them out. "What are you looking at?" Seeing Song Da's aggrieved gaze, Song Ying glared back. "Song Da, aren't you practicing the Vajra skill? This slap won't hurt or itch." "I didn't practice on my face, okay, Miss Sun?" Song Da smiled bitterly. "Who told you not to practice on your face? If I practice on my face until it's stiff, then there won't be any expression at all. Okay, I'll go back and practice on my face." Song Da was defeated. He really didn't know how to deal with women. "Alright, little girl, what are you doing here?" Song Howren looked at Song Ying and laughed. "Don't tell me you don't know where this is. As your niece, I have the right to supervise your indecent private life." Song Ying snorted coldly and directly pulled Song Haoran's ear. You actually came out to have fun when I was half dead tired from work? Ahem. I'm going to the toilet. Seeing this scene, Bai Shuatang stood up sensibly and quickly pushed the door open. Song Ying suddenly stood up, one hand on her waist and the other on Song Haoran's forehead, angrily said, You're the executive director of the Song Dynasty Group. It's fine if you don't go to work every day, but you actually come to play with women when I'm at work. Song Haoran, do you have any moral sense of shame? So, why did she add, during my working hours twice? Luo Qiu blinked his eyes, and then sent a towel from the ice bucket to Song De, indicating that he should use it to apply the towel. Perhaps it would be more suitable for young Master Luoqiu and Miss Song Ying to change genders? Song De suddenly looked at Luoqiu on a whim. Is there anything else you need, Mr. Song De? No, nothing. Song De shook his head and then sighed, thinking, strangers are like jade. Then he glanced at Song Ying, who was still pulling Song Haoran's ear, and sighed again. Vicious. At this time, there was a knock on the door. A young waiter came in with a fruit platter and some drink. At this moment, Song Ying gave Song Haoran some face. She resentfully let go of his ear and then said, Do we have anything? The waiter smiled and said, This is brought in by the private room. Oh, just leave it there. Song Ying pointed at the table in front of her. The waiter nodded and bent down, ready to put down the platter, but the moment he bent down, the young waiter suddenly raised his head with a fierce look. A cold light popped out from under the fruit platter. It turned out that he had hidden a dagger under the platter. The dagger stabbed straight at Song Haoran. But Song Haoran's reaction was very fast. He clapped his hands and caught the dagger. Hey, I've been waiting for you for a long time. I thought you would be more patient. The waiter was shocked and immediately let go of the dagger in his hand. He quickly retreated and took out a pistol from behind his waist. Without saying anything, he pulled the trigger. In this private room, gunshots were suddenly heard. Chapter 940. At this time, the assassin disguised as a waiter almost emptied his magazine, but the bullets did not achieve the desired effect. That was because the moment the gunshot rang out, Song De let out an angry roar. Song De rushed to the assassin at a very fast speed, grabbed his wrist and raised it up. He shot continuously, but the bullets only hit the ceiling of the room. Then, Song De snorted coldly and broke the assassin's wrist with a forceful grip. Ah! The assassin screamed, and the pistol was snatched away by Song De. At this time, Song De kicked the assassin and sent him flying into the wall. Moreover, under the killer's desperate and unwilling gaze, Song De exerted force with both hands and directly bent the pistol, then casually threw it on the ground. The assassin was in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat. At this moment, he looked at Song De as if he was looking at a devil. He cursed in a language that was hard to understand, but it was not easy to talk to him. It's all right. Song Haoran let go of Song Ying. At the moment when the assassin took out the gun, Song Haoran held Song Ying in his arms and threw her to the ground. Then, he turned his back to the assassin. Only after Song De defeated the assassin did he pull Song Ying up. Song Ying's lips were a little dry, but she was not too panicked. She had encountered similar assassinations several times, so she had long passed the stage of panic. At this time, Song De rushed forward again and dislocated the assassin's shoulder. Then, he grabbed the back of the assassin's collar and lifted him up. Speak! Who sent you? The assassin was in so much pain that he was sweating, but he did not say anything. He just stared at Song De with hatred. Song Ying frowned. She recalled what Song Haoran said when the killer took out the dagger. Uncle, did you lure this guy here on purpose? Is that why you came here? Of course. Otherwise, do you really think I would come here to play with women? Song Haoran stretched out his finger and flicked Song Ying's forehead, and with little Luoqiu. What kind of people do you think we are? Furthermore, your sudden appearance almost ruined my original plan, lass. Song Ying was speechless at this time. Then, she glanced at Luochio, only to see Luochio gently shaking his head with a helpless look. I'm sorry. Song Ying finally succumbed to Song Haoran's authority and bowed her head to admit her mistake. I really don't know what to say. Song Haoran sighed at this time. Don't you think that your uncle is a scumbag who likes to play with women? Is little Luochio the kind of a guy who likes to play with women? If he was a scumbag, he would have eaten her long ago, okay? Song Ying felt so wrong that she couldn't raise her head. Song Haoran continued to pursue the victory. Let's say your uncle is a scumbag. If I want to play with women, why don't I play in my own village? Any one of them is a standard agent who can be sent out to hide and seduce, okay? Do I need to take a fancy to these vulgar women here? Little Luochio, am I right? I'll get you a top one later. Thus, Song Ying instantly found a reason to turn the tables. She fiercely lifted her leg and stepped on Song Haoran's foot. Go to hell. Song Scumbag Haoran. Song Haoran looked like he didn't feel pain, the corners of his mouth raised, and he smiled slightly. Luochio, who felt that Song Haoran's life was very difficult at this time, suddenly said, Don't you plan to deal with this assassin first? Song De seemed to be used to it. Hearing this, he directly threw the assassin in his hand to the ground. Master, I don't understand what this guy is saying. Song Haoran put away his playful heart at this time, directly squatting on the ground, stretched out his hand to grab the assassin's collar, lifted him up slightly, and said in another language. This time, the assassin didn't continue to curse, but just remained silent. Song Haoran shook his head and said, Take this guy back, I'll apply some medicine on him later, and then continue to ask. Okay. Song De nodded, directly chopping the back of the assassin's neck with a knife, knocking him out, and then carried him on his shoulder. Who is this assassin? Why did he want to assassinate you? Song Ying frowned at this time. Tell me honestly, is this guy in cahoots with the person who bombed my sports car before, and is targeting the heir of the Song family? Actually, this matter is... Song Haoran was about to speak, but suddenly frowned and turned around. He felt some kind of danger was approaching. However, the door of the private room was empty, and there was nothing unusual. Song Haoran's frown deepened. Finally, a cold and gloomy laugh rang out. Someone slowly moved to the door of the box. It was actually Bai Shuitang. At this time, Bai Shuitang's face was full of fear and nervousness. He raised his hands, blocking the door of the box. Second uncle! Song Ying screamed in fear. Song Haoran's face sank, because, at this moment, a head was poking out from behind Bai Shuitang. A cold smile, a gloomy face, this person was Basil. At this moment, he was pressing a pistol against Bai Shuitang's back, and then directly grasping Bai Shuitang's shoulder with his left hand, slowly pushing him into the box. Song Haoran. Basil's voice was even gloomier than his expression. You better not move, otherwise I can only drag this president of the Chamber of Commerce to accompany me. Don't worry about me. Bai Shuitang quickly said. Hurry up and kill this bastard. Xiaoying, this guy is the remnant of the family that killed your parents. He came back for revenge. Song Ying subconsciously bit her lips, feeling extremely worried. Song Haoran sneered at this time. Basil, oh Basil, you think a Bai Shuitang can threaten me? Basil said indifferently. That depends on whether you really don't care. Song Haoran, I've studied you. In the words of the Chinese, they were especially loyal. If you have the guts, you can leave him to die. Song Haoran walked past Song Ying, approaching Bai Shuitang without expression. Bai Shuitang's lips moved slightly, as if he wanted to say something. Song Haoran took a deep breath and said, Brother Bai, don't worry, I will definitely avenge you. Bai Shuitang's pupils suddenly widened. He didn't expect Song Haoran to give up on him like this. Young master, looks like you really don't want to care about this person's life or death. Then I'll fulfill your wish. Basil sneered again at this time. His palm exerted force, and the muzzle of the gun pressed hard against Bai Shuitang. Don't! Bai Shuitang screamed in panic. Basil still sneered at Song Howren. Song Howren also looked at him calmly. The two were in a deadlock for a few seconds. Song Howren suddenly sighed, then took 2 steps back and raised his hands. Okay, you won this time, Basil. What do you want? What do I want? Basil sneered. What do you think? Let Song Tianyu come to see me in person. Then, let this big guy leave. This guy is too dangerous, I dare not let him stay here. Basil was now looking at Song De. Song Da's eyes seemed to spit fire when he saw Basil's fearless gaze. Song De, do as he says. Song Howren suddenly ordered. But young master, at least you should let father know the situation here, right? Okay. Song De nodded helplessly. Go in. At this time, 2 men grabbed Luochio and Song Ying respectively, pushing them into a cold room. This seemed to be a shop that sold frozen meat. Because of the gun pointed at her, Song Ying glared at them, but she had no choice but to go in unwillingly. Let go of your hand. I can walk by myself. But she was pushed to the ground, and then directly into the cold room. Luochio seemed to be pushed as well, but he didn't fall. Instead, it seemed that he was pushed, making him walk 2 steps faster and directly into the cold room. The man who pushed Luochio was a little surprised, but he didn't think too much about it. At this time, he directly asked his companion to close the door of the cold room. At this time, Song Ying climbed up from the ground and took a breath. Her whole body seemed to be eroded. The cold air washed her internal organs in an instant, making her shiver. Song Ying didn't say a word. She walked into the door of the cold storage room and tried to open the door. After finding that it couldn't be opened, she began to feel around the cold storage room. Luochio curiously asked at this time, "What are you looking for?" "Of course, I want to see if there is any way to get out." "Are you an idiot?" Song Ying turned back angrily. "Look at the time, you are still so leisurely. Don't you know how dangerous we are now? In this place, it won't take long for people to freeze to death." It was too cold. Song Ying had to breathe on her hands, but the hot air she exhaled froze and directly vaporized in an instant. After a breath, Song Ying gave up this way of warming up, and then frowned at Luochio. "Aren't you cold? It's okay for the time being." Luochio also learned from Song Ying and began to knock on the wall of the cold room, but it seemed that Song Ying's eyes were always on him. "What's the matter? I say." Song Ying looked at Luochio and seemed to be speechless. Finally, for some reason, she seemed to explode. "At this time, shouldn't you take off your clothes and put them on me? If I take them off, I will be naked, which is a bit bad." Luochio shook his head, and there is no real effect. Luochio looked at the thin long-sleeved clothes he was wearing. You really have a girlfriend?" Song Ying hugged her own body and shivered. In order to make her body produce more heat, she kept jumping up and down. Luochio said, "Yes, and I have seen your parents. Is God blind?" Song Ying lowered her head and muttered, and then squatted down directly to make her body lose less heat. "In this case, we can only count on my uncle and grandpa. Song Howren, this bastard, must have gone too far this time. He likes to court death." Song Ying and Luochio were locked in the cold room, and Song Howren was taken away by Basil. In Basil's words, he had to take good care of Song Howren, otherwise it would be too easy for him. Luochio said softly, "He should be fine." "How can you be sure? That guy doesn't look like a good person." Song Ying's lips began to tremble at this time. Luochio didn't speak, but suddenly began to rummage through something on the shelf in the cold room. Soon, Luochio took out a small paper box, and then came in front of Song Ying. After he opened the box, there was something completely solidified inside, milky yellow. "What's this?" "Butter," Luochio said casually, and then dug out a little. "Eat this, it can provide your body with heat. Well, of course you will still feel cold, but at least you won't faint in a short time." "Really, eating this is useful?" Song Ying was a little hesitant. Luochio told the truth. "I don't know, I read it in books. I have never tried it before." "Well, it's better to try it than to wait for death. Even if the people outside are trying to find a way to save you, you have to make sure you can wait for their arrival, right? Then you take a bite first and let me see. Okay, I want to experience this. Luocio nodded, and then broke a small piece of butter and put it directly into his mouth. Because it was too hard, he could only chew it, otherwise it would be difficult to swallow it. How is it? Is it effective? Song Ying asked curiously. Even if it is effective, you probably can't feel it. Luocio shook his head and said, after all, it is only the body that produces and absorbs heat. Besides, this thing doesn't taste good. Song Ying gritted her teeth, and finally chose to swallow a small piece of butter. Probably it was a psychological cue, but Song Ying felt that her condition seemed to have improved a little. She blinked her eyes, and frost appeared on her eyelashes at this moment. Luocio sat beside her at this time, and the two were separated by about a palm's distance. Song Ying then found that Luocio's body was actually trembling slightly, and gradually, Luocio began to hug himself with both hands. Not knowing how long it had been, and not knowing whether the butter she ate had any effect, Song Ying just felt that her eyelids were very heavy, as if she could fall asleep at any time. You hurry up and ask me something, or I will fall asleep. Ask what? Anything will do. Interests, love, hobbies. Like to eat. Ah, so troublesome. 3 measurements will do too. Hurry up. If you leave here, what do you want to do the most? Luocio thought for a while. Drawing a cake to satisfy my hunger. That will do. Song Ying gasped. I want a cup of hot water. So little? Song Ying said, isn't water the source of life? What's so strange about wanting a cup of hot water? I don't lack anything. That's true. Luocio nodded. She was indeed a woman who didn't lack anything in others' eyes. Well, let me ask you. Song Ying stuffed a handful of butter into her mouth at this time. If we are really going to die here, before you die, who will you miss the most? Luocio closed his eyes. His body was always protected by a powerful and mysterious power. This was a passive power, like a permanent buff given to him by the club. But since he ate the first mouthful of butter, he actively turned off this permanent buff. The cold in the refrigerator stimulated all his nerves in a flash. Although his mind could completely bear the cold, his body still faithfully reflected it at this moment. In this desperate situation, close your eyes, who will you miss the most? This child, you don't want it, but I want it. Even if I have to sell my car and house to beg for food, I can raise it myself. I won't spend a penny of your money, and I won't covet my husband's legacy. Sure enough, it's still her. That woman who was always like a defeated dog, too lazy to take a bath, and even secretly smoking. That woman. Suddenly, Luocio felt something soft hugging him. When he opened his eyes, he found that Song Ying had directly held him in her arms. Seeing Luocio opened his eyes, she quickly said, You scared me, I thought you fell asleep and couldn't wake up. Are you better? Luocio said softly, Thank you. Yin 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 yin. Chapter 941. After all, Song Ying was just an ordinary person. At best, she was just a girl who had trained before. The cold environment soon took away her physical strength. Like a patient suffering from narcolepsy, Song Ying's eyes were struggling between closing and not closing. She hugged Luocio tightly and never separated from him since the beginning. Maybe it was the instinctive need to survive, but she didn't have any bad thoughts. She just wanted to keep each other warm. Porridge, porridge. Luocio's body was also at its limit. This time, it was a spontaneous idea to experience the fear of death, but he found that he didn't experience it at all. He had died once. The first time, he was shot by a customer, but he was resurrected in the club immediately. Maybe it was because he had the concept of immortality in his subconscious, so he didn't feel the fear of death. It seemed that this experience was a bit useless. He probably wouldn't have such an unnecessary experience in the future. His brain seemed to be completely split into 2 halves. One side was rational thinking, and the other side was emotional experience. Rationality, on the other hand, was constantly analyzing this emotional experience. In fact, in the end, Lucio didn't really understand what his nature was. Porridge. I know. That morning you made it, right? Yes. Since he was seen through, Lucio admitted it very frankly. Song Ying's eyes were almost unable to open at this time. She said weakly, How long have we been here? It's been a long time, almost an hour. Less than an hour. Song Ying seemed to be a little surprised, but it seemed like she was talking in a dream, like a year. Maybe you can think of something happy, Lucio suggested. Song Ying didn't realize that Luocio's voice was so stable from beginning to end. His body was obviously trembling, but he didn't feel it at all when he spoke. Song Ying smiled bitterly. Happy things. In a short time, Luocio's eyes suddenly turned and quickly glanced at a shelf of goods in the cold storage room. Then, he said softly, isn't it a happy thing to be with your family? Days can be counted, and happy things can naturally be counted as well. Then, that's too many, too many. Song Ying had already subconsciously leaned her head on Luocio's shoulder. From as long as I can remember, to before my parents passed away, let me tell you, I can't even count. Can you tell me about it? Lucio suddenly grabbed Song Ying's hand. She suddenly felt a little warmth, but her body was still uncomfortable. Her consciousness did not feel the pain of the cold, but at the same time, she was very tired. This was a very strange state. I remember one time when I was in kindergarten, there was a dance competition, Song Ying said slowly, some of the memories she had hidden for a long time. Perhaps it was because of this kind of approaching death that she didn't deliberately think too much about what she should and shouldn't have done. As long as she could think about it one more time, as long as she could say it one more time, in such an environment, no one would complain about it too much. Instead of saying it to Lucio, it was better to say it to herself. Thoughts past hidden in the heart. There's a lot. I can't say it all. Song Ying suddenly opened her eyes and smiled bitterly. I've said so much. Should you also say something? Lucio suddenly said, in fact, there's something I don't understand. That night, you told me, you said that you want to keep me, and even marriage can be regarded as a means. What is it for? Song Ying was startled. She didn't know if it was because the cold environment in the cold storage room confused her memory, because she remembered that she should have said the reason once. But why did Lucio ask again? She didn't want to think about it. At this time, it was extremely difficult to just keep herself awake. Song Ying said subconsciously, I told you what happened after my parents left. At that time, I was lying in the hospital bed, and I was actually awake. But Grandpa sat alone next to me, lonely and lonely. The head of the Song family could only cry helplessly at that time. I don't want the same thing to happen in the future. Finding you is Grandpa's greatest wish in this life, so I want to keep you, Song family. If Song family can be cleaned up, we don't have to face so many enemies. So I will always work hard. Even if I'm exhausted, it's a very happy thing for me. I know that although Grandpa loves me very much, he still has the mentality of valuing boys over girls. But in fact, I don't mind. He values boys over girls because he thinks that the hard things should be carried by men, and the women of Song family should stay at home peacefully. In fact, I don't want to prove that I'm better than men. But Song family has no one, such a big foundation, only my uncle can inherit it. Song Ying smiled bitterly. You know my uncle's character. He can't keep Grandpa's foundation steadily. I know he has his own ideas. He may not care about the wealth of Song family. He may be able to create another Song family that is stronger than the current Song family in the future, but I can't. I don't have that talent, no matter how hard I work, no matter how much time I spend on work. I don't have that talent. I can barely maintain the current scale of Song dynasty. I can only replace my uncle to keep Grandpa's foundation. I'm so tired. I'm really tired, so I think if at this time, there can be one more person, one more you also have the blood of Song family. You are the descendant of Brother Grandpa. You are actually more qualified than me. When Grandpa told me this, I hesitated for a long time. But in fact, this is really the most effective way to solve the Song family's current predicament. There is not much happiness in the marriages of rich families. The marriage between families and the union between the strong is even more common. Compared to them, I am actually luckier. At least to be honest. I don't hate you. And Gan Hong is also very willing to stay by your side. I rarely see her so relaxed. But you are really irritating. I am an impatient person, but you are always so lukewarm. Let's not talk about it anymore. I will be angry if I talk too much. In fact, you just asked me what I want to do the most if I go out. I said I want a cup of warm water, but I lied to you. If I can go out, the first thing I want to do is to tell Grandpa that I am fine. Are you listening again? Are you asleep? Luo, she seemed to use the last of her strength to get up. She looked up and saw that calm face, and found that he was looking at her with a smile. For some reason, that gentle smile reminded Song Ying of her childhood when her parents were still around. Actually, when you smile, you look pretty good. She suddenly wanted to kiss this person. But it did not seem to be the attraction between the opposite sex, and the kiss was not lust. Her consciousness gradually slowed down. Song Ying subconsciously gave up on thinking, and just moved according to her feelings. Slowly, he wanted to kiss this smile. She closed her eyes, and the last trace of heat in her body became the motivation for this action. She did not know whether she succeeded or not, but she felt that she had gone to a very warm place. She suddenly fell down. Luoqiu looked at her approaching him. He knew what Song Ying wanted to do, but she still fell down in the end. Perhaps she would fall down. Luoqiu held Song Ying's body and whispered, "Leave it to the person who can give you happiness in the future. It should be enough." With that, Luoqiu slowly lowered his head. The cold air turned into frost, gradually covering his and her hair. Quiet. Dead quiet. Suddenly, with a bang, the door of the cold room was opened. A figure rushed into the cold room, holding Luoqiu and Song Ying with one hand, and then walked out quickly. Outside the cold storage room, Song Haoran was holding the backs of the two people at the same time, but he was crying. He looked at Song Tianyu standing in front of him and said in a hoarse voice, "Dad? I was wrong." Song Tianyu sighed and instantly aged a little. He said in a low voice, "Let the doctor come over." "I was wrong too." Tinkle. It was the sound of the wind blowing the bell hanging by the window. The hot weather outside made the asphalt road appear distorted. In the big bed in the room, Luoqiu slowly opened his eyes. After waking up, Luoqiu first glanced at the bell by the window, and then smiled. Then he looked at Song Haoran, who was sitting silently on the sofa. He seemed to be thinking about something, but at the same time, he found that Luoqiu had woken up. Song Haoran did not get up, but still sat on the sofa. At least, he looked at Luoqiu with a reluctant smile. "How do you feel? Did you come back to life?" "I came back to life. Are we back to my humble house? With such a decoration style, there shouldn't be any other place except my humble house." Luoqiu looked around and said. Song Haoran was startled and asked curiously, "You don't seem to be surprised that you are out of danger? If this was the script I thought of at the beginning, I shouldn't be too surprised." Luoqiu shook his head. Song Haoran was stunned. When did you find out?" Luoqiu said casually. "At first, I wasn't too sure. But later, when I was looking for butter in the cold room, I accidentally saw a power cord. Then I paid attention and found a camera hidden behind the shelf." Song Haoran said, "A camera doesn't mean anything. Maybe this is just a way for Basil to threaten Dad." Luoqiu shook his head and said, You brought so many people with you when you went out this morning, but in the end, your enemy still managed to sneak into the Red House and even hold President by hostage. Nothing happened at all. That's a little inexcusable. Song Hauran opened his mouth, then suddenly laughed. Little Luochio, if you are my enemy, that's too scary. Saying this, Song Hauran shook his head, then made a call and simply said, You can come in now. A short while later, there was a knock on the door, and a stout middle-aged man walked in. Despite this, his face was thin and he looked extremely gloomy. The person who had knocked on the door and entered was none other than Basil. When Basil saw Song Hauran at that moment, he hurriedly called out, Eldest young master. He then turned to Luochio and said, Master Chiu. Luochio was a little surprised and said, Are you going to tell me that you know each other? Song Hauran made a gesture, and the Basil in front of him stretched out his hands to his face and started to rub it. In the end, Basil actually forcibly tore off a whole piece of his face. It's a 3D printed leather mask, Song Hauran said. It was developed using some of the techniques imparted to me by Mr. Blind. The owner of this face is the real Basil. But I've already gotten rid of this Basil. When did that happen? Luochio asked curiously. Song Hauran said, Do you remember the first day we came here, when we went to Zhonghua Street? At that time, I felt that Bai Shuitang's attitude was a little strange. I told you, my intuition has always been very accurate. So, I asked Oni and Luvia to do some investigation. Luvia may sound hot, like a female fighter, but she is actually a very powerful hacker. Luvia found in Bai Shuitang's personal computer that he used some of Song Dynasty's funds to secretly set up a company outside, and this company has another partner. Basil? Luochio asked. Yes, it's Basil. Song Hauran nodded. I've actually fought Basil a few times, but every time he lost, he was the one who lost. I didn't expect that this time, he actually hooked up with Bai Shuitang. I planned to catch this old fox Bai Shuitang. So, before I went back to the village, according to my father's order, I had already asked Oni to bring people to kill Basil. Song Hauran looked at the man who had taken off his face. This Basil you see now was selected by me from the village. For more than a week, the person who has been in contact with Bai Shuitang is him. Does Master Song know? I didn't say at first. Song Hauran shook his head. I originally planned to finish it today, but I didn't expect Xiao Ying to suddenly break into the Red House, so I had to change the plan at the last minute. Song Hauran said with a wry smile. I apologize first. It was my idea to put you in the cold room. I originally planned to let something happen between you, but in the end, my whole head is filled with guilt. What about Bai Shuitang? Song Hauran said indifferently, What else can I do? For such a guy with bad intentions, of course I sent him around the world. Why are you telling me this? Luochio suddenly asked. Song Hauran was silent for a moment. Because of guilt. To be honest, I never thought about what Xiao Ying said in the cold room. Even my father. He looked at Luochio. I'm telling you because I hope you don't mind. I can guarantee that this kind of thing won't happen again. After saying that, Song Hauran stood up. He lowered his head and apologized seriously. I'm sorry. What do you plan to do next? Luochio asked again. Song Hauran said, I will tell Xiao Ying that the criminal has been killed. As for Bai Shuitang sacrificing himself to save me, in the end, only you, me, my father, and this fake Basil know about this. Since you feel guilty, why don't you just tell Xiao Ying about this? Luochio shook his head. Song Hauran sighed. Xiao Ying also sees Bai Shuitang as family. If it were you, would you want to know the truth? If that's the case, there's no need to apologize to me. Luochio smiled. That's good enough. Song Hauran stared seriously at Luochio and suddenly asked, Those words? Did you deliberately lead Xiao Ying to say them? I don't remember. Luochio shook his head. I almost died back then. What do you think? Ha ha! Rest well. Song Howren left Luocio's room and walked in the corridor with the person pretending to be Basil. At this time, the person pretending to be Basil said in confusion, "Senior Master, there's something I still don't understand. At that time, we had the mechanic who helped you secretly install explosives on Miss Ying's sports car. It clearly didn't have much power and wouldn't kill anyone. It was just to fool the killer. But why did it directly blow the sports car off the cliff?" "I don't know either." Song Howren shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Maybe God felt that I was too fond of seeking death and gave me a warning, ding-ling-ling." It was still the sound of wind blowing bells. In another room. When Song Ying woke up, she saw Song Tianyu sitting beside her and holding her hand tightly. "Grandfather, it's okay, it's okay." Song Tianyu chuckled and patted the back of Song Ying's hand. "It's okay. Grandfather didn't cry this time." "Grandfather!" Song Ying cried and laughed. "I'm okay too. Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling-ling." Chapter 942. Song Ying was very sad that Bai Shuetang had sacrificed himself to save Song Howren. Fortunately, Bai Shuetang's enemy, Basil, had been eliminated. It could be considered as revenge for Bai Shuetang. Song Howren said this to Song Ying in the presence of Song Tianyu, so Song Ying did not doubt it at all. "I remember that second uncle has a cousin who works for him on Zhonghua Street. I think his name is Baijan." Song Ying sighed. "Grandfather, second uncle risked his life to save uncle this time. We can't treat him unfairly." Old Master Song nodded. "Don't worry, your grandfather is someone who will repay kindness with kindness. I have some impression of this Baijan you're talking about. A few years ago, Bai Shuetang brought him here to pay his New Year's greetings. I won't mistreat him." After pausing for a while, Song Tianyu patted Song Ying's hand and said softly, "Xiao Ying, stay here and rest for the next few days. Don't worry about anything else. Have a good rest." "No. I still have a lot of work to do in the company." Song Ying shook her head. "I can't leave at this time. After all, grandfather, you only have a few days left before you return to the country. I have to deal with it as soon as possible." Song Tianyu felt heartache and guilt. His voice became softer. "You don't have to worry too much about this. I'll get someone to deal with the company's matters." "Get someone?" Song Ying was stunned. She frowned. "Who else?" Song Tianyu smiled. He raised his head and looked at Song Howren, who was standing very quietly at the side. "Who do you think? This guy is a director of the company after all. He has been gone for so long. It's time for him to work properly." "Uncle?" Song Ying looked at Song Howren in shock. She knew Song Howren's character very well. If he was unwilling to do something, many times, even if her father asked, he might not be willing to do it. Song Howren shrugged at this time. "Don't look so incredulous, girl. The Song family has so many properties, and I'm still alive. You can't be expected to shoulder all of them by yourself, right?" Song Ying had a suspicious look on her face. Why did her uncle, Song Howren, seem to have changed his temperament after she woke up? In the past, this guy did work for a few days, but ever since she graduated early and came back, he threw everything to her. He, on the other hand, went on adventures all over the world. "What's wrong? If you feel bad that I'm busy with work, you can consider quickly finding a husband to help me, scram." Song Howren returned to his usual frivolous manner. Old Master Song, on the other hand, waved his hand. "You can leave first. I still have a few words to say to Xiao Ying." "All right." Song Howren nodded. "I'll go ask the servant to find me a suit for work. I'll leave first." After Song Howren left, Song Tianyu looked at Song Ying and sighed. "Your uncle actually misses me when I was young. It's not that he doesn't have responsibilities, it's just that his heart is higher than the sky. Actually, the Song family is far from enough to satisfy him." "Then, uncle, this time?" Song Ying was a little confused. "A person with high aspirations also has to step down." Song Tianyu shook his head and said, "It's probably a good thing that he has this idea. Just let nature take its course. The burden on your shoulders is not given to you by us, but by yourself. When it's time to put it down a little. Grandpa always feels that you and Uncle are a little strange now." Song Ying shook her head. "Maybe it's because we've been through a lot recently." Song Tianyu sighed and suddenly said, "Also, I thought about the message I conveyed to you that night and felt that it was a little inappropriate after thinking about it. I think we should just forget about it. Pretend that I didn't say anything." "That night?" Song Ying was stunned. Song Tianyu said, "I'm talking about the matter between you and Luoqiu. A forcibly picked melon won't be sweet. So I think it's better for you to let nature take its course. Maybe we can find a more suitable one. Especially you. What's wrong? Are you still worried that I'll suddenly bring this up again, little Ying?" Song Ying didn't know what to think and quickly said, "Oh, I know. Thank you, Grandpa. If that's really the case, I'll be relieved." Song Tianyu laughed. "You don't hide anything in your heart. Your grandpa isn't that kind of person. The important thing is what you think. To be honest, I really want to see you walk into the church with a happy smile. Grandpa, I might as well not get married. I'll accompany you in the future." Song Ying hugged Old Master Song like a spoiled child. "Ah." Old Master Song gently patted the back of his only granddaughter. Song Ying was also smiling, but she seemed to have something on her mind. She simply rested her head on Song Tianyu's shoulder and looked out of the window. No one knew what she was thinking. At night. It was already 1 o'clock in the evening, but there were more people patrolling in the house. Because the Song family had been attacked twice in a row recently, Fifth Uncle, who was the butler, was very angry. He had given a strict order that if it happened a third time, everyone would be replaced. These bodyguards were all from the village. Many of them regarded it as an honor to be in charge of guarding the house. If they were driven back, that would be the worst thing that could happen. So they all gathered their strength and didn't let go of any possible place. "Who's there?" In the darkness, a cold voice rang out. Then, 3 bodyguards rushed out in an instant, blocking the front and back of a figure in the corridor. One of the bodyguards even pulled out a gun. "You're courting death." Unexpectedly, the person who was caught was none other than one of the masters they were guarding, Song Ying. Song Ying was only wearing thin pajamas at this moment. She stared at the 3 bodyguards, making them sweat profusely. They thought to themselves, "What the hell is wrong with this Miss Ying in the middle of the night? Can't she stop for a while?" "Sorry, Miss Ying, we thought there was an enemy." One of the bodyguards immediately admitted his mistake. Okay, go do your work." Song Ying waved her hand casually and said, "I just can't sleep, so I came out for a walk. You can go back to your post." "Okay then." The bodyguard said, "If there's anything, please remember to shout at once. We'll be there soon." At this moment, the house was like an iron bucket. There shouldn't be any problem, so the 3 bodyguards quickly left. Song Ying sighed at this moment. After walking through the corridor, she stopped in front of the door of a room. Song Ying hesitated for a while, but finally reached out and knocked on the door for a while. Not long after, she saw Luoqiu open the door. Seeing Song Ying knocking on the door, he was stunned and said, "What's the matter? If you're going to race, I think it's better not to go this time." "Can I only race with you?" Song Ying glared at Luoqiu. Luoqiu blinked. The first 2 times were for racing. You'll die if you don't piss me off once." Song Ying clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. But soon, like a deflated balloon, she hugged her hands and said, "I'm hungry. Cook me some porridge. I want to eat this. Now." Luoqiu looked at the time. It was almost 2 in the morning. Can't I?" Song Ying's tone was a little weak. Luoqiu shook his head. "That's not it. Wait a while, I'll take a coat." Luoqiu quickly put on a thin coat and walked out. "Be careful. Fourth Uncle doesn't like other people touching things in the kitchen, especially his kitchen knife and spatula. At this time, Song Ying was sitting in front of the kitchen table. She looked at Luocio with her chin in her hand and kindly reminded him. Cooking porridge actually doesn't need a kitchen knife and spatula. Luocio smiled and said, "Don't worry, after you finish eating, I'll wash them." Humph. Song Ying snorted and looked elsewhere, but not long after, she moved her eyes back to Luocio, who was washing the rice. She did not know who told her that a man who could cook was particularly charming when he was cooking. At that time, Song Ying did not think much of it. If it was a man with superb cooking skills but ugly appearance, even if he was charming, it would be in the opposite direction of the y-axis arrow. Just a little bit. Song Ying tilted her head and muttered. "What did you say just now?" Luocio turned around at this time. "Who told you that? You think too highly of yourself. Hurry up, do you want to starve me to death?" Song Ying subconsciously glared at him again. Luocio shook the water stains on his hands and asked casually, "What do you want to eat as a side dish?" "Youtiao." Song Ying blurted it out without thinking. Unfortunately, Luocio shook his head and said, "I don't know how to make youtiao." Song Ying immediately said with disdain, "What? Zero. You don't know how to make youtiao?" Luocio laughed and said, "If you insist that you know how to make something that you don't know how to make, wouldn't that be worse? There are some salted vegetables here. They should be made by fourth uncle. I'll just make some for you." Okay, as long as it's edible. How long will it take?" Luocio said, "The kitchen here has a very old-fashioned stove. I found some lychee wood, so I plan to use firewood to make it taste better. However, it will take a little longer." Song Ying sighed with a helpless expression. She grabbed a tomato from the vegetable basket beside her and took a bite. Later, Luocio began to break the lychee wood and put it into the stove bit by bit. Then, he started a fire and began to watch the fire. He seemed to be very busy. What an incredible person! It seems like he knows everything, but it also seems like he doesn't. I don't see him taking the initiative to show off either. This kind of person. I need to accompany him for a long time before I can slowly discover his. Song Ying began to feel sleepy as she watched. Her eyelids began to become heavy. She watched Luocio's back gradually become blurred. Only the rhythmic crackling of the firewood could be heard in the silence. When the firewood began to smolder, Luocio stood up and stretched. At this time, Song Ying had already fallen asleep on the table. Luocio directly took off his coat and put it on Song Ying's body. Then, he walked into the courtyard outside the kitchen. There was a small vegetable garden here. He didn't know who was taking care of it, but it was in good order. The night was as cold as water. Luocio went down to the small vegetable garden, picked some green vegetables and shallots, and then began to get busy. Time passed by little. Song Ying suddenly woke up. After all, she couldn't sleep for too long in this position. When she woke up, she found a coat on her body. Song Ying didn't speak, just put the coat on the ground, and then stuck out her tongue at Luocio's back. At this time, there was actually a clay pot in front of her, and there was a small plate of pickled radish next to it. There seemed to be a little sesame oil on it, and there was a fragrance of sesame. "You woke up just in time. What time is it?" Song Ying yawned. "It's 3:30 in the morning." Luocio came to Song Ying with a plate at this time and put it down in front of her. "It's boiled. I didn't fry it on the fire for fear of waking you up. But it's not suitable to eat too greasy in the middle of the night. The vegetables are tender leaves picked outside the courtyard, and they are easy to digest." Even so, this simple boiled vegetables didn't seem to be casually cooked with hot water, but simmered with stock. Song Ying watched. At this time, Luocio opened the lid of the clay pot, and the fragrance of rice began to overflow. Accompanied by rolling white smoke, the pure white rice grains in the clay pot had completely melted. "Do you like to eat shallots?" "It's okay." Song Ying nodded. So, Luocio sprinkled some green shallots on the white porridge, and then put a bowl in front of Song Ying. Song Ying couldn't wait to hold the bowl with both hands, but it was too hot, so she immediately withdrew her hands and quickly pinched her ears. But she quickly realized that Luocho saw this, so she immediately pretended as if nothing had happened, carefully held the bowl, and then turned around with her back facing Luocho. Drinking slowly, she slowly sucked. Then, she ate a little more with the pickled vegetables. The pickled vegetables were pickled by fourth uncle, who had excellent cooking skills, so the taste was needless to say. As for the vegetables simmered in the stock, Song Ying didn't let them go, and finished the whole stack. After coming back, she almost didn't eat anything, so this meal made her feel full of happiness. When Song Ying put down the bowl, she seemed to have eaten a little too much. She glanced at Luochu proudly and found that he had already started to clean the stove. "Hey, you said you have a girlfriend. What kind of person is she?" Song Ying suddenly asked. How should I put it? Luochu thought for a moment and said, "She should be a very quiet girl, and very good at taking care of people." Song Ying frowned. "Then what do you like about her?" "Just because she is very good at taking care of people?" Luochu turned around. "There is still some in the pot. Do you want to eat more?" No, if I eat more, my stomach will burst." Song Ying quickly shook her head. Luochu smiled and walked to the table to clean up the tableware. Song Ying looked at him with a pitiful expression, and her voice became much weaker. "Hey, you still haven't told me, what do you like about her?" Luochu stopped and looked at Song Ying. "Have you seen the black tulip?" Song Ying nodded. Luochu whispered, "She is like the black tulip, mysterious and noble." Chapter 943. It's easy for us to ignore the pain. The flowers outside the municipal opera house had already withered and been cleaned up, and the memorial words written by the mourners on the wall of the opera house had also been erased. There was an endless stream of cars on the street outside, and the renovation project inside the opera house had reached the final stage. In about a week, the opera house would be able to operate again. At this time, San Francesco was standing on the third floor, looking around the stage of the opera house. He was so silent that it was scary. He didn't find what he wanted. That day, when Roger had hijacked the opera house, he had died in the hands of some unknown person. When he finally arrived, one of Roger's keys had disappeared, but the document that recorded the nuclear warhead was still found. Since San Francesco could find the document, it meant that the fact that Roger had a nuclear warhead was not exposed. In that case, why couldn't they find the key? Judging from the situation at that time, since he couldn't find it on Roger, and there was no possibility that the secret had been discovered and taken away by someone else, then San Francesco could only think of one possibility. Roger finally hid it somewhere in the opera house. That was why he ordered his men to secretly monitor this place as soon as possible. He also used his identity as a philanthropist to fund the renovation of this opera house. During this period, no one came. Later, the government used some means to interrogate the bandits on that day. Finally, they got the information and arrested all the remaining members of Roger's gang. It could be said that the possibility of the key being leaked was extremely small. "Where the hell is it?" San Francesco put his hands on the wall of the stand, frowning. Although the search of the opera house could not be said to have been thorough, it was to the extent that they had checked all the seats and chairs. "Father." Suddenly, a voice came from behind San Francesco. He turned around. It was Cucini. San Francesco looked at his watch and then said indifferently, "You're late." Cucini apologized at this time. "I'm sorry, Father. Something happened on the way, so I cleaned up a few small fries before coming here." "Is it the people from the Drug Enforcement Agency?" San Francesco frowned. Cucini said, "They've been very stubborn recently, but today I've already done as you instructed and stopped all business. I've also told those big shots not to sell anything for the time being. They've all agreed. I'll go into hiding for a while." San Francesco nodded, then sneered. "The country next to us is really good at framing people. They put the blame on me when something happened to them. It doesn't matter. Sooner or later, I will destroy their economy." What should we do next? Cucini asked seriously. Saint Frank continued to sneer. Tell the people in the factory to work overtime and mass produce for me. Cucini was puzzled. We've already stopped doing business. Why do we still need to mass produce? At this time, Saint Franco said indifferently, since they have already pushed the responsibility to me, then I can only make something that doesn't exist. Since they don't want to do business here, I'll do business with them. I'll just take it as collecting some interest first. A large number of zombie-like drug addicts appeared in hospitals? I'll turn their whole society into real zombies. Saint Frank suddenly laughed strangely, then walked to Cucini and reached out to lift her hair. Go dress up. Next, accompany me to meet someone. Cucini showed a puzzled expression. Saint Frank said, to meet a faker who's been very popular in the upper class recently. Cucini said, Father, you mean the messenger of God from the Bacchi cult? Saint Frank nodded. Bacchi cult. I'm looking for Bacchi, but a messenger of God suddenly popped up recently, and he doesn't show his real face. Interesting. Cucini hurriedly said, Father, do you think this messenger of God is Bacchi himself? Saint Frank shook his head. I'm not sure. I have to see him in person to know. If he is really Bacchi, with my understanding of this slippery guy, he can't hide. But, whether he is Bacchi or not, one thing is certain now. Looking at Cucini, who was listening attentively, Saint Frank said expressionlessly, It is this cult that has an inestimable influence at present. Its believers are almost all members of the upper class. Recently, even some high-ranking officials have quietly joined in. Cucini was stunned. Even the officials. How can the government allow this to happen? Saint Frank sneered. That's the strange part. The government, especially the security department, doesn't seem to care about this matter at all. It makes me wonder who's behind the church. If this is the case, then it is necessary to make friends with this messenger of God. Cucini nodded. Father, your ultimate goal now is to ascend to the throne of the country's president. If you have a large number of upper-class people and high-ranking officials behind you. Saint Frank reached out and stroked Cucini's face, then suddenly said, I heard this messenger of God likes the devotion of female believers. Go dress up. Cucini nodded in silence. Manner. It had been changed from the villa of Mr. Bezin, an ordinary rich man, to a magnificent manor. Of course, this manor was also provided by another believer for free for the messenger of God to live in. Almost all of them were young and beautiful girls, like a country of women, especially the place for the believer's blessings, which had been remodeled into a temple hall. At this time, in this temple of blessings, the messenger of God was sitting on a specially built huge chair, surrounded by several beautiful girls. These beautiful girls were selected after many rounds of selections. They were also required to wear gauze dresses as a symbol of purity. There were all kinds of styles. Recently, they had even begun to write articles on etiquette. Even Mr. Bezin, who was the first to be appointed as a servant of God, had now begun to organize the daily words of the messenger of God and began to edit the doctrine of the church. Unexpectedly, sitting on the throne, Buggy sighed. At first, he just wanted to live a comfortable life, but now, he had become a messenger of God who meant what he said. He didn't even need to do anything every day. He just needed to cast a blessing spell, and he could wait for the believer's faith to enter his account. Then, he just needed to use the faith and the club to buy something. For example, he needed to buy the kind of meat that he couldn't stop eating. Another example was that he recently bought a charm spell, so that the believers could be more devout to him from the bottom of their hearts. However, it seemed that after using the charm spell, the believer's faith was still generated, but the quality seemed to have decreased. But now, the number of believers was increasing. Compared to the increase in quantity, the decrease in quality was not important for the time being, right? I wonder if I can buy a demon to play with when I have more faith? Buggy rubbed his chin, feeling a little restless. Of course, he didn't want to play with the ordinary demons. Because he had a contract with Lucifer, Buggy had played exciting sex games with the descendants of several low-level demons and humans. But he was almost the same as them, and it took him more than half a month to recover. If he wanted to play, of course, he wanted to play with Charlotte's level. It would be best if he could play with Charlotte herself. At this time, Bucky stood up from his divine throne. Recently, it seemed that because he continued to buy that magical meat, Bucky felt that his body had become abnormally strong. He didn't have any muscles, but now that he took off his clothes, his well-defined muscles could be seen. At this time, several beautiful girls sat on the ground and leaned in front of Buggy's legs. There was only admiration left in their eyes. Anyway, there was no one here. Just as Buggy was thinking about how to properly study life with these beautiful girls here, very clear footsteps came from below the palace. Yu Yi, dressed in a maid costume, walked slowly. The black leather shoes stepped on the floor with a sound. Buggy glanced at the beautiful girls beside him and found that they were like petrified. Buggy shook his head, then took off the mask on his face and walked down from the throne. "Isn't this the most honorable Miss Yu Yi?" Buggy opened his hands. Of course, he didn't intend to hug the maid. It was just an expression of welcome. "I don't know if I'll be able to earn enough faith power when I can no longer just buy Charlotte to play with." A trace of greed flashed in Buggy's eyes. But in an instant, Buggy felt a sense of suffocation. Death seemed to be in front of him, making his heart beat wildly and his body break out in cold sweat. Yu Yi looked at Buggy indifferently at this time. "Did you think of anything strange just now?" Buggy suddenly shivered and hurriedly flattered. "I was thinking that your boss is really a lucky person to have such a beautiful servant by his side." Miss Maid smiled slightly and didn't look at Buggy. She just looked up at the decoration style here. Buggy quietly wiped the cold sweat at this time. He rolled his eyes and said, "Miss Yu Yi, in fact, when you come next time, you don't need to freeze these girls. They are already my slaves. Even if they see you, they won't have any reaction. They are just my toys now. I'm afraid the next time will be a long time later." Yu Yi shook her head at this time. Buggy was stunned. He thought of something and suddenly said in surprise, "A long time later? Why? Miss Yu Yi, are you leaving? That won't do. If you leave, what should I do in the future?" Yu Yi said indifferently, "My master just asked me to be your assistant. Now, with the development of your church, there are some results. And your fanatical believers will also help you very well, so I don't intend to give you any help for free in the future." This. Buggy frowned. After quickly weighing in his heart, he finally nodded helplessly. "Okay then." Yu Yi continued at this time, "But don't worry, although we will leave here temporarily, we will never let you not buy anything." With that, Yu Yi waved her hand. Then, a tablet suddenly appeared in front of Buggy. Buggy took it and looked at Yu Yi with some confusion. "It's just specially prepared for you. After you open it, there will be some useful things that I have calculated. If you want to buy, just click on it. This tablet can be regarded as a mobile purchase port of our shop." So convenient. Buggy began to try to operate the interface of the tablet in surprise. At the same time, he found a series of numbers in the upper right corner of the screen. Buggy subconsciously counted, 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, no need to count. Miss Maid said indifferently, "The numbers above are the faith units you have now. This tablet is linked to your mitre. It can automatically calculate your faith unit quota. In addition, what you are looking at now is only the price list of general goods. There is also the interface of special goods. Special goods need to be negotiated separately." Buggy fiddled for a while and suddenly found the magical meat that he liked to eat on the general good. He immediately clicked on the icon without hesitation. A box popped up to indicate the number of units to be purchased. The maximum number of units at a time seemed to be 99. Buggy thought for a moment, directly bought 2 sets, and then pressed the button to confirm. In the past, this thing was sold for 50 units, so 2 sets of 100 units was not a problem. After Buggy finished his selection, a halo suddenly appeared above his head, and then 2 pieces of fresh meat fell directly to the ground. Buggy caught them with one hand and his face lit up with joy. This is really convenient. But Buggy's face quickly stiffened and he frowned. Miss Yu Yi, is there a bug in your terminal? Why did I deduct 107 units of faith from my side? 2 sets are obviously only 100 units. The extra is the delivery fee. Yu Yi looked at Buggy and said coldly, Buggy, have you heard of a free delivery service? Or do you have any dissatisfaction with me? No. I promise not. Buggy quickly shook his head. That's good. Miss Maid smiled sweetly at this time. Buggy's breathing quickened again. It was not that he had any thoughts about this beautiful smile, but he knew too well how terrible this woman's smile was. Well, that's it for today. Use your mobile terminal well. If it is broken, the repair fee will be deducted. I see. Buggy nodded. Miss Maid turned and left at this time. Buggy breathed a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, before leaving, Miss Maid suddenly turned around and said quickly, By the way, I forgot to tell you one thing. That is, this terminal is not for you, but for you to rent. A month's rent is 800 faith units. Then work hard.